I believe we have a quorum. As usual, we have electronic meeting attendance protocols, and I'd ask you to observe them. Make sure you've joined the meeting via board view. Attendance by electronic link, we have Councillors Foley, Fletcher and Sayers. I don't need approval of that. And I'd like to, we've met for a wee bit. Congratulations to Auckland FC and bad luck for the Warriors. And Talofa Lava, happy Samoan Language Week. And apologies, I have lateness Turner and early departure Turner. He hasn't put that in writing, unfortunately, but declarations of interest. Do I have to approve it, move and thing Turner? Anyone bothered? Two people over there with the Deputy Mayor and the member for Franklin. Confirmation of minutes, please. Anybody read those? Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Short. In favour? Aye. Contrary? Carried. Items on the agenda, none known. We have no petitions, no public input, no local board input. So I'd like to welcome Paul Connell to the stadium. Our Independent Audit and Risk Committee Chair, along with Emma Burke, Council's Chief Risk and Assurance Officer. Councillor Short will move this item, and I'll second it. And this is the summary of the referred Audit and Risk Committee reports. Over to you, Paul and Emma. Good morning, Paul.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. So this is a new process where we reduce the level of detail coming to the Council and instead come in person with summarised reports. We have two reports this time, the health and safety and the enterprise risk. Health and safety, you know, has been undergoing a reset over quite a period of time. All the indicators were turned red because we had a lack of consistency and a lack of central transparency over health and safety. The system's been rebuilt and the framework refreshed. Critical risks and controls are progressing. So we've got quite a change in terms of the central approach and standardisation. The drug and alcohol guide has been updated. There have been 4 WorkSafe notification incidents this quarter, and all have been closed in terms of investigations. A little bit of unfinished work is that the health and safety rep coverage is still below target and is a little uneven across the organisation. I think, though, the headline item which keeps everyone awake on health and safety is frontline aggression. So that is a continued focus for the team, and there's a program being put together there, which I'm sure Phil can talk about in a minute. The second is the enterprise risk. So there's no change in the risk ratings this cycle, with the exception that the transport transition program is lifting our risk temporarily. And this is to be expected. It's probably, I mean corporate-wise, it's one of the bigger transitions in New Zealand that you'd see, really. This is a big deal. And so, of course, it comes with risks. The risk team is embedded in the process and helping manage those risks. The other things that have happened is that there has been a review of the risk appetite, and a number of councillors attended a workshop which created some very animated and stimulating discussion. There was also a workshop with the ELT, and as a consequence of those workshops and some thinking, 3 areas of risk have been reduced in terms of we are prepared to take a bit more risk. Otherwise, the risk ratings are the same, and some areas have been re-described, some controls have been improved, particularly around data and IT and security. Those have been sort of re-described. So that's it. Basically, it's steady as she goes, apart from eyes up on the transport risk, which we all understand anyway. And happy to take any questions.
Are there any questions? Well, I've got one. Health and safety is always pretty annoying, I've found. And it adds to cost everywhere, but not a lot of health. I noticed in our council eating area, the food portions are enormous, and so are some of the people who eat them. Do we do any measure of that part of health? Because there are some people in there who are morbidly obese and that can't be healthy. And we feed them even more than we should, and we should say, don't. Or is that really interfering? Or is that actually practicing health and safety, which you're not really supposed to do? You're only supposed to get orange cones out and drive people mad.
Point of order, Mayor.
It's a question?
No, well, I just don't think talking about people, it's
Well,
point of order.
In charge of hospitals for many, many years, and everyone told me that one of the worst things for your health is to be morbidly obese. I want an answer from you. Did you look into that?
That's not an area that's come to my attention, Your Worship, so I can't comment at this point in time.
Safety is only a bit of health and a bit of safety. Councillor Ferry, please.
Kia ora. I think we're talking about health and safety risks that we can control and that are part of the workplace, and people's diet is absolutely not something that we should be, I think, having any control over in the workplace. My question though, and I guess I sort of feel like we had a little bit of an example of it just then, is around aggression towards staff and how we as elected members who have a public platform may be contributing wittingly or unwittingly to a culture of aggression towards staff, and whether you or perhaps Phil have any comment on that.
Yes, so it has been highlighted. If we look at the chart of incidents, the highest incidents type is aggression. So it is front and centre. We have seen work at within the groups, so this is outside council, at AT with putting in the safety shields, and I've personally seen and the sort of random but security officers travelling on buses. In terms of the organisation, there has been a trial of a working together safely program, which is which I gather is based on de-escalation and providing workers with more skills. But it is definitely a focus of management, and I wonder, Phil, whether you'd have some more detail, up-to-date detail on that.
Okay. First of all, just to acknowledge that in our risk assessment work, and therefore flowing into the actions that we're taking in the health and safety space, violence and aggression towards staff is right at the top of the list. Okay, there is a lot of evidence, a lot of stats that go to public behaviours directed at staff. There are a couple of aspects to that. In some of our facilities, we're talking about mental health and other antisocial behaviour issues coming into our work environments, just because of the fact that we're very community-based, and as you can imagine, with staff in over 200 locations around the region, we're exposed in that regard. So there are strategies in place around that. To the specific point about the culture, if you like, that we might be feeding, I have to be honest and say that I think there's some unhelpful stuff that is part of appropriate political debate in one view, but has the effect of being challenging for staff to deal with, because it cultivates attitudes, commentary, be it on social media and otherwise. So we haven't specifically addressed that to you. I'll acknowledge that. I would go as far, and maybe there's a discussion best to take offline and have with you, but I would just ask for your sort of goodwill and understanding, and outside of this chamber, it's part of a bigger picture, clearly. I'm not particularly singling councillors out here, but it does go to something I think is of concern.
Thank you.
Thanks for raising it. Chief Executive, has there been any take-up in the recent offer by the government for money to be spent for protection of elected officials? Because I have had a continuing string from the Speedway people have not given up, and I'm fed up with it, frankly.
Your Worship, I'll have to come back to you on that. I'm not familiar.
Councillor Bartley is also from the dog people go after her and the Speedway people go after me, and both of us are fed up with it, actually.
I acknowledge that's a real issue. We've talked about that before, and I think appropriately messaged expectations out into the community and put some security arrangements in place. To the specific point about the provision for greater security that's allowed for through the Remuneration Authority settings and what have you, I'll have to come back to you on that.
My hand up, and I'm sure Josephine will too, but I'm fed up with it. Thank you. Councillor Turner.
Thank you. On the back of the Mayor's talk about health and safety and some of Councillor Ferry's questions and your answers, Chief Executive, health and safety is a huge cost. It's a huge killer of productivity. It's one of the things which is driving us into deficits. And yet, take Auckland Transport. The government not so long ago replaced the traffic management plans, which was about 600 pages thick, with a new manual, which is about 60 pages thick, and is based mainly on, I won't get my terminology right, but site-based analysis rather than procedural analysis. And I'm building myself a little dossier, if that's the right word, of pictures of the different standards we're seeing all over the city, I'm seeing all over the city, a roundabout with people gardening and 2 other people observing each approaching road. That was 9 other people. Another roundabout in the same area with 1 person, a flashing light, and 5 working on the road, on the roundabout garden. So my question to you is, where in your stuff, where do you sit that you can affect one change that is allowable? Where are we going to? Can you see a way of grappling with this issue? For instance, I'm scared to bring my dossier in case all the people with no traffic control or limited traffic control get told to use more. So how does this all fit into the reality on the ground?
Yes, if I can respond in 2 ways. First is that the Audit and Risk Committee is primarily responsible for the risks in the council, not AT. But in the council, I can say that what is happening is is with the new refresh of the risk management of the health and safety risk system, we're getting consistency across council, and there'll be some simplification in that because there'll be only one set of rules, one set of ways of doing things. So we're seeing simplification in council through having one consistent approach. In terms of AT, traffic management has obviously been a big issue, and a declaration of interest. I'm on the board of WorkSafe, and for a period of time WorkSafe had the road cone reporting line and probably worked with council. So beyond that, I haven't got a comment today. I don't know whether the CEO has, but my remit is to receive the risk register from AT, not get involved in managing its risks. And so sort of off the cuff, I would be a little bit reticent to throw something into the debate, but I don't know whether you've got a comment, Phil, or not.
If you do, Phil, can I understand that a little bit better? So you're accepting the records, basically, but who should be sitting in front of us to talk to us about the delivery in the council family? Because Auckland Transport's coming in on board, so...
Yeah, the again, not all of Auckland Transport's coming on board, but I gather that the roads will be, so that will come that will come into our interest, yeah, and it will be part of the health and safety management system shortly, but it isn't currently, so I haven't looked into that. The key issue for our committee is to ensure that the risk register and the processes, so I should talk to them and they come to us and to present. So we're looking at the risk processes for AT, but we don't go further than that because it's got its own board and has been doing its own thing. That will change, and so we may have a different discussion next time I come, but today I've got no further comment to add, I'm afraid.
Thank you, so Mr. Chief Executive. I'm still unclear of who's delivering what.
Well, the first principle is that the line management, the leadership in the relevant area has primary responsibility, supported by a health and safety team. In the transport space, my suggestion would be that we arrange for Steve Mutton to discuss with you in due course. Happy to arrange that as the person who we've recently appointed to steer the ship going forward in terms of that aspect of transport operations. It doesn't surprise me that you see variability in the approach. The whole point of moving away from something really prescriptive and potentially over-engineered, might not be quite the right expression, and to something risk-based where we assess the genuine risks in each location for each project means that there will be differences. That's probably not a bad thing if it makes sure that the traffic engineering and what have you is really appropriate to the context and the actual risk. But we discussed this as recently as this morning in the executive team, and it's a key priority for Steve. So I think we'll take it offline and create an opportunity to talk about what that looks like going forward.
Thank you.
So Watson, please.
Pursuing the health and safety line a little further with regards people who work for Auckland Council, I think it would be useful if there was maybe some comparators there to other public-facing work, because obviously there's a deterioration society-wide. It would be useful to know what Auckland Council employees face over and above that, or what are some of the unique circumstances that characterise the council. Obviously, dog control, public facing at libraries and community centres, we're aware of that. But what else over and above those obvious areas is it that affects the people that work for us? I'm pretty sure, and no doubt Phil will confirm, that all our staff have de-escalation training, so that I'm assuming people are well equipped with the training as how to approach generally, because in many areas it's a daily occurrence. That's a correct assumption, Phil, wasn't it?
Yeah, we've got a program, and that's a key plank. Obviously, it's an ongoing investment because of turnover and refreshing and what have you, but there's a program to that end, yeah. Yes.
And I guess as far as elected members go, in terms of their dealings with the community or interactions with the community or each other, I suppose the old adage of treating others as you like to be treated yourself is probably a good starting point. Certainly, labelling people morons or idiots or even show ponies publicly probably isn't going to get a reasonable response from the community at large. So, I think that cuts both ways, to be honest.
So we've got stats which are in the health and safety report that show where the incidents happen, and clearly the biggest numbers, the community directorship, followed by residents and infrastructure. But we can probably get that broken down into a little bit more detail and get that type of sort of cross-cutting so you can see, and we can deliver that at some stage. I'm not sure whether you want that in the interim or the next time I front up here.
Councillor Hills, please.
Thank you. Just 3 questions. The first one is on climate. Looking at the report, you've obviously got that as a critical risk, and I guess how one, do you see issues how we're tracking both in adaptation or mitigation, but also do you see a problem that there is too many people trying to lead that work and no clear responsibility, or would you say the responsibility lies with Phil and he kind of directs that?
I think the responsibility lies there, and I mean, everyone has climate as a consideration when they're making decisions. And there's sort of two big areas. One part of it is the asset management planning, and I think those folk really do understand what they're doing and what they're facing. And then they've got to come and talk to you about the long-term plan and how much money they get, and I won't comment on that. The other area is, of course, spatial planning, and that's an ongoing challenge, but there has been changes there again with the flood areas. Everyone has to think about it, but it does come back to Phil and the exec team, and the exec team, from what I understand, work together on these things. But again, if Phil would add anything, I don't mind.
No, that's correct. I mean, we've all got responsibilities here, for sure. Obviously, you've got to look to the management and exec to do its part, but where progress is in the policy realm in terms of your settings, your level of investment to achieve outcomes, then you share in that.
Thank you. The next question just is on health and safety. So the obviously New Zealand, I think we have twice the deaths of Australia and 4 times the deaths at work than the UK. With Auckland Transport coming in, and as well as the decision around Tony Gibson, recently the appeal has noted that he had, even if he didn't have visible responsibility, he had direct responsibility. How do you feel the risk with Auckland Transport coming in for us, or for our decision making, is going to escalate with all that in the mix?
Yes, so first, to be clear, elected members are responsible but don't have are not exposed to prosecution or penalties. So just so we can all be comfortable that people sitting at this table, apart from Phil, aren't facing personal exposure. But the responsibility is still there. So clearly, broadening the organisation to include AT will broaden the risk profile. It's already a big organisation, it's just got a bit bigger, or quite a bit bigger. So yes, so clearly that will raise it. One of the key things that comes out of the Gibson case is the concept of work as envisaged versus work as done. And so in terms of how the framework works, we say, we have some critical risks, we have some controls, and then we have assurance processes that go and have a look to make sure the controls are actually being implemented as we thought they should be. So that's the work as envisaged. That's in the work program. If we look at the detailed report, which you've got access to, it is there. It's not, we haven't got to that point yet. We're still working on the controls, but it is in the program to have the assurance work to make sure the controls actually work. And that sort of covers off the Gibson issue, where that was absent on that night shift in particular.
Thank you for that. And the last question, just on our financial policy. So you've noted that we have really clear policies to try and avoid uncertainty, even though everything's uncertain, so on depreciation and things like that. And you will have seen some of our discussions through the budget. But I guess with, I think, oil spiking today because of another decision, how do you see us tracking going forward with financial tools in place, but also all this uncertainty? What do you have any advice to us of how we deal with that constant, almost month-to-month change in budgetary direction?
So I think the finance team has the tools to calculate, sort of mathematically calculate the consequences of these things, so they can roll them into their numbers. There's then a need to find opportunities to reduce other costs to compensate. So that is a management task, which happens in every budget. I mean, as soon as you do a forecast, the only thing you know it's not going to look like, it's not going to be that way. There's always going to be things moving. That's the very nature of any forecasting, any budgeting. So there will always be the need to compensate for changes, have the ups and downs sort of type schedule. So management, I believe, is onto that. Longer term, if changes are baked into the economic costs, if we have increased inflation that stays and then gets baked into future inflation. So it sort of compounds. If we have fuel stays up for an extended period, then plans will have to be looked at. I think the council has the tools to do the work, but it'll then come down to, unfortunately, it'll come back to you to receive that information and make decisions as to what stays and goes in order to balance the books. So I think the tools are there, but unfortunately the discussion is going to come back here at some point, potentially.
Thank you for that. Thank you for your attendance. I'll just honour as Councillor Turner's got another question.
Thank you. Just on that too, given that the National Climate Risk, the National Climate Change Commission, and the have all accepted or that this new report which says that RCP 8.5 climate analysis or basis is implausible. Yeah, I just heard Councillor Hills ask about our climate risk. How do you take that sort of fundamental shift in planning and in policy? How do you bring that into your risk analysis here? Do you feed it back to us, or do we have to feed it your way?
I know that should come through, because when management's making its plans, it's always looking at scenarios. It never looks at a single point and says that's what's going to happen. I don't think they've taken the extremist scenario in the long-term plan, and if there was going to be a change, it would come through that planning process.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much for that. Right, any debate on this particular item? In which case I will put the motion that we receive the consolidated referred report from the Audit and Risk Committee, including health and safety wellbeing update. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. To the contrary, carried. Thank you for your attendance, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
We'll move on to item 8.2, the Tupuna Maunga Authority Operational Plan. Normally this would come to the same meeting as our annual plan, but the TMA only met to decide this on Monday, so it's coming here. Councillor Filipaina, would you like to move this? I'll second it for you. Thank you. Welcome, Dom, and your team. Good morning.
Kia ora tātou. If it pleases your worship to have this report generally taken as read, and I might make a key point. So the key point really would be that for the budget to be agreed and be finalised, it must be agreed by the Tupuna Maunga Authority and Auckland Council. And so Auckland Council, of course, to make the decision today, and some days ago on the 25th of May, the Tupuna Maunga Authority unanimously agreed to adopt the draft operational plan and its summary. Of course, this was based upon a set of consultation that was carried out, two sets, one set by Auckland Council and also one set of consultation by the Tupuna Maunga Authority. And it was reported to you all jointly with the Tupuna Maunga Authority at a hui we had back on the 22nd of April. Kia ora tātou, for any questions.
Deputy Mayor Simpson, please.
Thank you. Thank you for what you do for our Maunga and for our city. If I wanted to know a little bit more about the detail around Ohenirau, and I just need to know for my own community, can you just come back to me? I really just want to know a little bit more about the fire break. I know that you're spending $10,000 a year on that fire break. Just want to understand where it is and how it works. Could you come back to me, Dom? You don't have to do it now.
Yes, we shall. Thank you.
Are you answering that later on, Dom, eh?
Yes, well, offline we can come back to
I
it.
don't need a very specific local issue to be around this table. I'm happy for him to come back to me local.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Watson, please.
Yeah, just a general question on the net network-wide programs as it goes to signage, interpretation, storytelling, and whatnot. As it progresses through the years, there's quite a significant increase in that aspect of the programs, and I'm just curious to know. It makes references to things like unique infrastructure and site-specific interpretation. I'm just really interested to know what that actually entails. I assume, you know, which is always very good to have. I can think of various places where they have the lovely, you know, histories that are, you know, certainly very educative. And is that the sort of infrastructure we're talking about, or is it something completely different?
It's a really wonderful question, because I think you might recall that in some years past, the authority is very keen for the sites to be recorded from their tentative state as World Heritage Sites to being future World Heritage Sites. And so that is a program still in play. And so this storytelling will really feed into that, assuming that will go through in the future. Of course, in the co-governance space, the storytelling is something that is very complex, because you have 13 iwi groups around the table alongside Auckland Council and the co-governance of the tupuna maunga. And so it's a complexity to it. But it's also unique in the sense that there can be unique carvings, there can be unique, the sorts of information centres, for instance. So I think that's one key area that I know that the authority has talked about a lot, is to have more information centres on the maunga. Kia ora. Hope that answers.
Councillor Fletcher, you have a question.
Thank you, Your Worship. Dominic, can I thank you sincerely for all of the work that you've put into this, and also for the amazing advocacy that you've brought around the protection of the maunga view shafts. My question to you, though, is relating to the operational budgets, and that is my understanding that any future challenges to the judicial review and the Court of Appeal and potential Supreme Court action will be met not by Council directly, but from operational budgets. So can you just confirm that, and can you confirm that it will be a decision of the members of the TMA if they wish to pursue further legal action?
My understanding is that the Auckland Council generally provides legal support to their tupuna maunga authority, and so that's the general position. In relation to recent litigation, the Auckland Council had the view that it was wise not to pay for the particular action that was happening. I think in the context of that, the first step, of course, is we've got to wait for a decision to come out in relation to the extant litigation. And once that comes out, the steps will probably be that management would review alongside legal counsel, and then would put to the chair and deputy chair, or the co-chairs and deputy chair, in terms of whether it should go on the agenda as a matter. And certainly that would be a preference for management.
Notwithstanding the rather litigious bent that has been taken on this, I really do want to commend you for what is outstanding leadership and work for the TMA. So thank you, Dominic.
Thank you. I'll pass that on to the team. Kia ora.
Councillor Gillan, please.
Oh, thank you. Look, I'm happy with this, but I've got a couple of questions. I note that the full facilities maintenance contract seems to be separate from Council's contract. What's the reasoning behind that, or is it a subset?
That's a really good question, because there's quite a history to why they're separate. Essentially, the old P17, I think it was called, was divided into 5 areas, as you well know, and but though the maunga were spread across those areas, multiple of those areas. And so there was the risk that you'd have different teams working on the maunga. And so the Tupuna Maunga Authority, it's an independent statutory board, and it made the decision to withdraw from the Auckland Council wide facilities program and went on its own path. That said, the two went hand in hand, and so Auckland Council, through its process of tendering and so forth, sought tenders for the whole of Auckland, which included the maunga at the time, and it gave us an indication of pricings. And that meant that when the Tupuna Maunga Authority did its own full facilities maintenance contract, it actually had the benefit of already having quotes across the board. And so the contracts are also very, very similar.
Okay, oh, that's good. So you're confident that this is, the price you've been given here is correct and in par with what council's getting for the other contracts?
Yes, I am. I think it'd be fair to say that the co-governance space, because of its uniqueness, can attract extra costs. That said, the team, just like any part of the team within Auckland Council, work on better value projects, and it's a really important part of the Tupuna Maunga Authority's ethos is to make to get the best value. Yeah, Kelka.
Okay, thank you. My last question is just on the budget overall. How do you actually work out the budget? Is it done on a per site basis? Is it done on what's actually required over the time and then worked out how much that is? Or is it done on a funding formula like local boards? Or how's that worked out?
Well, of course, this particular operational plan sits within the long-term plan budget, and it's the authority really wanted to make sure that there was no additional request for funds, particularly in these economically austere times. But essentially, there's the management team working alongside the governance and the overall governance direction through the integrated management plan. We'll see an overall direction of what's needed on the maunga, and that's factored into the calculations, and it's factored into that 10-year package.
Okay. So you're able to factor in what assets need renewing or building and that, and then you put that, okay, all right.
Yes, that's the aim.
Thank you.
I've got a question. Councillor Fletcher raised the question of the volcanic view lines, and Minister Bishop has raised those with relationship to the Mangawhau station. Is there anything happening there that you're aware of on those?
I'm not sure if there's a discussion at the governance level. I'm aware that the co-chairs of the Tupuna Maunga Authority wrote to Minister Bishop, and he's responded, and management between the two lines have been organising communications, but there's definitely a line of communications at the governance I'm not aware of. But in the letter from Mr Bishop, it was clear that he said that he wasn't intending to exercise powers, the central government powers under the Resource Management Act in relation to the view shafts. He was simply, he said in his letter, trying to open a discussion on the matter.
So is there an open discussion on the matter or not?
With different hats on, I've as a council staff member, I've had a look at a report that's been prepared by the Ministry of Housing in relation to view shafts. That hasn't been shared with the Tupuna Maunga Authority. So I think it's still a confidential report that the Minister is working on. So there's discussion on that, I suppose, within staff. But otherwise, no, I'm not aware of discussion yet at the higher level in terms of governance yourselves.
I don't think I am either, so that's fair enough. Any further questions for this gentleman? Councillor Turner. Oh, sorry, I've got a couple all of a sudden. Turner, Short and Bartley.
Thank you. I just got sidelined by one of your answers there. How can you read a document with one hat on and it considered not be shared with the Maunga Authority when you've got another hat there that... Oh, you don't have to answer that, I think, on a rhetorical question. These contracts, how do you satisfy your Maori outcome criteria for contractors, etc.? You know, like if Mana Whenua wants to deliver their own services inside the Maunga areas, do they have to subcontract to these to your principal contractor?
I can say that the team has really been working to try and increase Māori contractors within the team and within the team of contractors. We have to go through still a process to ensure that the contractors meet all of the requirements. Auckland Council's got a very clear set of requirements for ensuring that contractors meet health and safety and all the various steps that need to be done. And so our team probably have done a little bit of extra work to help some iwi contractors to reach those levels, and a number of them, yes, have worked through the more sort of established providers, if you like, on subcontract. But our rates are very high. I don't know exact rate, I can report back to you, but it's definitely over half are Māori providers.
But they will subcontract to your principal contractor, who's an Australian company.
That's a regular. The principal contractor, yes, it's green by nature, and so there's a lot of subcontracting through there.
Thank you.
Councillor Shaw, please.
Thank you. I see you guys are looking to implement a Maunga water strategy. Is that in line with Healthy Waters? Are you working with Healthy Waters to do this, or is this, again, on your own?
Yes, I must admit that the authority, is an independent statutory board, and so it has its own decision-making powers and so forth. That said, the staff at the staff level work very closely with Healthy Waters and all of the groups in council. We also spend a lot of time working with the Kaitiaki iwi leadership and to help inform that planning, and that's in process at the moment. Kia ora.
Sorry, just one more. I can also see that you're also looking at strengthening your volunteer network. Could you kind of just touch on that a little bit and expand on that?
I think most of the volunteer work is occurring in this sort of area of pest control and planting, the sort of general, more planting, of course. And that's an area where the authority is really working hard to try and grow two things, I suppose. It's interconnection with existing volunteer groups, but also working closely with iwi, closely with schools, kura, kohanga reo and so forth. And that's working very well. I think basically starting almost this weekend, I think, and going right through the winter are plantings on all the maunga. The hard part can be that the maunga, of course, is steep, and there's some areas on them that are not suitable for the public to be doing planting, and so we do use contractors for that.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Bartley, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for this, Dominic. My question is, quite often we are dealing with a lot of loud negative voices, comments, but I'm just wondering, is the Te Puna Maunga Authority tracking the multitude of positive feedback that's coming through about what the authority has implemented throughout the various maunga, the upgrades of tracks that have never been upgraded before when it was under council, and now it's upgraded, the hangi pits, the playgrounds, the natural aspect that you've brought back to the maunga, removing cars, and people are commenting about how they feel safer now. They're not at risk of being run over when they're trying to walk up the mountain. Are you tracking that positive feedback?
Yes, we track all feedback. We still get a steady stream of, there's certain parts of society who are not really keen on co-governance generally. So that's a steady stream of that sort of feedback. But there's a real growth in positive feedback. And I think this year in particular, the the submissions on this operational plan, a majority of the submissions were in favour and in support, and in previous years it's been much closer. So I think these are tracking more positive. And I think you're right to raise the matter of the pedestrianisation of the Maunga. It had quite a bit of negative press at the beginning, and I think the Herald did a sort of a poll, and at the time there were 58% of people in support, and I think it was 30-something negative, and the rest were I don't knows. But it wasn't a full-on support. It was the majority, but that was early, and then it's all happened. It's rolled out, and I recall about 2 years ago, maybe DOC, Department of Conservation, did their own survey, and the percentage was up at about 80% in support. So that growth and support is something we're really noticing. We're noticing in the sort of mail we're getting at the authority. Kia ora.
Kia ora, thank you.
Perhaps those others went to Australia. Anyhow, no further questions, but thank you very much for your presentation. And no further debate. Well, I will put them. Oh, Councillor Turner.
Thank you. I just wanted to make the observation that, you know, my time on the TMA now for a term and a little bit is that they are very coordinated and could be a benchmark to set ourselves for some of this full facilities delivery. And I'd like to point out that, like Tupunga, the TMA, like the Mongas, our regional parks have clear boundaries, clear staff identification. They have sheds and tractors and trailers and chainsaws all parked up, and they also face that problem that the TMA has very wisely stepped away from, and that is that our regional parks fall into amongst the 5 full facility contract areas, which brings a complication and cost that through the P27 review we could fix. Thank you.
Thank you for keeping an eye on that for us, Councillor Turner. Councillor Filipina, please.
Hatamare koro matua to you, Chair. Good morning. Atamare e koutou katoa e ngā kaikanuhira and kaimahi. Tēnā koutou. To you, Dominic and Bizan, ngā mihi kia korua for the mahi you've done on this report. As everybody knows, this is the first of, I hope, many more operational plans to be passed jointly between the tūpuna maunga and governing body. I want to acknowledge ngā mana whenua tāmaki Makaurau, and in particular those that sit on the Tūpuna Maunga Authority. I want to acknowledge co-chairs Marama Royal and Paul Majuri. Also the elected members. We have Sarah Powery from Orake. She is a member of Tūpuna Maunga. Damien Light from the Howick Local Board, and John Turner from Pukitāpapa Local Board, also Councillors Fletcher and Turner. I want to acknowledge them along with the ngā mana whenua, because, I mean, without them, we wouldn't get the mahi done from a governance perspective. So to you all, thank you so much. Chair, my last acknowledgement is to all our kaimahi for their work on ngā tūpuna Maunga Tāmaki Makaurau, the ancestral mountains of Auckland. Without our kaimahi, again, everybody putting aside all the rhetoric and also emails and everything else that we get around what's happening with our tūpuna maunga, I want to acknowledge our kaimahi for the TMA. So ngā mihi kia koutou katoa, and again, as I said earlier, I look forward to adopting many more of the operational plans along with the GB Kilda.
Thank you, Councillor Filipina. Councillor Newman.
Oh, okay. Look, I actually just want, sorry I was late in arriving, but I just want to acknowledge the authority for its excellent stewardship. I mean, actually, one of my favourite walks actually is now around Mangere Mountain, which is absolutely, I mean, the work that they've done on the track there is just superb. And the cup and the playground there, it's just absolutely fabulous. And you visit the Maunga around Auckland, and they're clearly being much better maintained, and the access and the facilities that are provided for people to visit there is superb. And I mean, I probably don't pay as many compliments as I should in life, but I have to say that the Maunga that I'm visiting are just wonderful, and I do appreciate the work that's been done. I just want to acknowledge those who are on the authority. I'm not one of them, so I've never been part of this, but in terms of a visitor destination, I think these are really good locations to visit, and I do appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. That's finishes the commentary on that. It's fair to say that perhaps having an authority that focuses on a job is better than having a council that covers everything. So it has worked very well. So thank you very much for that, Dom, and your team. We'll put the motion to agree to the operational plan. All those in favour, please say aye. To the contrary, that's carried. And in the spirit of wonderful Auckland nature positive work which has been started and carried on by Maunga Authority, I'd like to welcome the Nature Positive Auckland Strategic Framework and Focus Debate 8.3 and bring forward the team from Next Foundation and others. It's my pleasure to personally introduce this item by first acknowledging the presenters to the table today. Andrew Grant, who's the CEO of Next Foundation, a wonderful organisation funded by friends of mine. Alex Rogers, the Director of Regional Operations for Te Makaurau, the Department of Conservation. Samantha Hill, General Manager of Environmental Services at Auckland Council. And Nick Tuaroa Morena, Director of Māori Outcomes at Auckland Council. Together they will introduce a vision for Nature Positive Auckland, which Next introduced to me back in October last year, and which does follow and meshes in very nicely with the work which we've just heard from Te Puna Maunga Authority. The presenters will share a high-level partnership framework that has been collaboratively developed and is a significant value for money opportunity getting co-funding with philanthropic and central government partners to amplify nature initiatives and related environmental, social and economic benefits. On the Next Foundation, I personally know the founders, who are very private people, so I won't concentrate on them, and deeply appreciate their mission in helping Auckland tackle problems facing the country's largest and growing city. The Next Foundation philosophy leverages investment opportunities through partnerships, amplifying environmental, social and cultural gains to standards that as a council we can be part of and proud of. Next partnerships are already inspiring projects in other parts of the country and in Auckland too, projects like pest management in the Southern Alps, predator-free Wellington, the restoration of Mount Taranaki, the restoration of Rotorua, which I hope many of you have visited. Wonderful day out there, please. And marine restoration in the Hauraki Gulf. They serve as an inspiration of what more could happen here too, building off what we already have. Protecting Auckland's natural environment is an ongoing job to stay on top of. We already invest in this and do a good job of it ourselves. This partnership opportunity with shared purpose will optimise, add value and make tangible difference. By endorsing today's item, we are strategically advancing Auckland's natural capital and saying that we care about our natural environment and how our communities experience and engage with it. This benefits everyone. Furthermore, what is good for Auckland is good for New Zealand, and Auckland is uniquely well positioned to be the first nature positive city in New Zealand, something I'm very proud of and will tell other mayors overseas. I'm pleased to be behind such a special initiative. It aligns with my priorities for a sustainable and efficient city. It aligns with the spirit of the regional deal. It leverages our investment, and it's my sincere hope that you too will see this as a unique, timely opportunity to get in behind. Today's joint presentation builds a unique relationship between a key philanthropic partner, mana whenua, government, council and community. Today's introduction is just the beginning. There's lots more to discuss in scope and further decisions to be made. So I'll now hand it over to Andrew Grant to introduce next and their interests in nature positive Auckland. I'll move this and Councillor Short will second it. So off you go there and welcome.
Kia ora, thank you. It's an absolute privilege to be with you this morning. I now have the joy of leading the Next Foundation. We are one of New Zealand's largest foundations, thanks to the generosity of Neil and Annette Plowman, very private people, but they are extraordinary New Zealanders, extraordinary Aucklanders. Their generosity has extended investments over $200 million to date, and they've committed circa that amount of money for the next 10 years. Previously, we have invested jointly in education and the environment. The new fund is going to focus exclusively on the environment and the restoration of our natural environment, and done in a way particularly that brings communities together and that builds on extraordinary efforts that already exist. When we look forward in terms of how we want to invest that money, we very much we have three things that we really stand for. One is generosity. We want to operate in a way that is generous, reflecting our benefactors. Secondly, we always want to act with partnerships. There is wonderful stuff underway. I'm just sitting through and hearing TMA and what they're doing. So we really want to stand on the shoulders and work primarily through partnerships and building on existing efforts. And finally, we really stand for mahi. The Plowmans made their money through real mahi. We're not a policy shop, we're not about lobbying, we're not about activism. We really are about rolling our sleeves up and actually helping do the real work. So that is the characterisation of the sorts of investments that we like to make. The primary goal that we have for New Zealand is in 2022, New Zealand signed up to the Nature Positive Global Commitment, the Kunming-Montreal Protocol around the winding back of biodiversity loss. So we as a nation have signed up. Nature Positive is a sovereign commitment that was also signed up by 196 other nations. There are 23 specific targets. I don't think many New Zealanders actually really know what it means and the practical implications of being nature positive. We aspire to really make that practical for New Zealanders. What does it really mean in the sense to be a nature positive nation and city? And in our view, for citizens, that's just when they look at, when they wake up in the morning to a dawn chorus, when they look at the trees on the Moanga, do they actually truly feel the way that they keep score? Is nature getting better or worse? And we would really like to be a significant contributor to making that sense of we are making progress on nature, we are making the natural world better, not worse, and in their day-to-day reality as citizens, the things that they care about and the markers that they judge by, that they're moving that forward. Yes, regulations help, yes, policy changes help, but we're about trying to really move those frontline measures that citizens really care about. When we look around New Zealand and the initiatives that we've invested in, historically the Next Foundation has spent, for every dollar we've spent, most of that has gone to the South Island. Now there's good reasons for that, given the biodiversity prize that is up for grabs there. However, the Plowmans have challenged me, well, the South Island is wonderful, we love the South Island, but not many people live there. Why can't we invest where people actually live, and why can't we make more of a practical difference to the lives of Aucklanders? So we strategically are putting Tamaki Makaurau right to the top of the list, and really have now spent quite a bit of time and effort. We commissioned a report by Koitu, working in partnership with Council, to look at where are the places that would make the most sense to invest in Auckland, in Tamaki Makaurau. We looked at what other cities have done. We looked at what small country towns like Wellington have done as well, in terms of whether there are any learnings that we could find from other places around New Zealand. And we've come up with a plan very much building on the great work that many of you in this room have done, Also, I think an acknowledgement of what are the things that are difficult for you to do. We've had some wonderful conversations with Dominic and his team. When you look at the practicalities of the TMA, they do wonderful work, but there are some constraints. Can we invest in a way with our money, with our resources, to help unlock some of those constraints? Likewise with DOC. We often find with DOC they have maintenance budget, they have operating budget, but it's very difficult to get the capital budget. Sometimes they require to really make a pivot forward. That's a space that we can move into. So we have tabled the plan that has the 5 core pillars of activities. They're very much building on things that are in motion, things that we believe are strongly aligned with mana whenua, and also where we can make a material difference in the short to medium term, and also really build foundations for the longer term. But most importantly, where we really feel that actually if we're being judged by citizens, will your average Aucklander in 5 years' time saying, actually, yeah, things feel a lot better than they did 5 years ago around those things that I care about around nature?
Tēnā koutou katoa, I'm Samantha Hill. I'm the General Manager for Environmental Services at Auckland Council. Thank you, Your Worship, for the opportunity to present today, and thank you to my co-presenters for joining me and sharing a unique opportunity to accelerate nature outcomes for Auckland through a coordinated system-wide approach. As the Mayor mentioned, the Nature Positive Auckland programme was introduced to the Mayoral Office by the Next Foundation and Koitu in October 25. And since then, staff have been working with Next, Koitu and the Department of Conservation to scope a framework for a Nature Positive Auckland and to identify a set of priority focus areas. Through that work, 5 focus areas have been identified. These are Nature Positive Auckland leadership, predator-free and Tamaki Makaurau, restoring biodiversity in Auckland's iconic places, nature and water, which is focused on growing biodiversity through water infrastructure initiatives, and why nature matters, focused on education and community activation. The Nature Positive goal for Auckland presents a significant opportunity. It will position us to accelerate biodiversity restoration, strengthen climate resilience, improve community wellbeing and social cohesion, and further unlock Auckland's nature-based economic and tourism potential. We know that no single organisation can achieve these outcomes alone. By acting collectively and investing wisely in protecting and restoring our environment, we have an opportunity to achieve lasting gains. Importantly, the Nature Positive Auckland programme and the 5 focus areas have been designed to align closely with existing council strategies and work programmes. It builds on Council's current investment in biodiversity and resilience programmes with the intention that these efforts can be accelerated through attracting co-funding from central government, philanthropy and the private sector. In that context, the Next Foundation's involvement is significant. It provides a rare opportunity to leverage philanthropic funding alongside council and central government investment, accelerating outcomes that we would not be able to achieve through existing budgets alone. The Department of Conservation is a strategic partner in Nature Positive Auckland, reflecting the alignment between Council's existing conservation activities, national conservation priorities and the recently signed regional deal. Mana whenua engagement is a critical part of this programme. 2 complementary approaches are proposed, regional leadership and place-based engagement. Ngā Matarai, with Nick's leadership, Council's Māori Outcomes Directorate are providing advice and support to ensure that mana whenua are involved at all stages, alongside the Department of Conservation in its role as Crown Treaty Partner. The Nature Positive Auckland programme will deliver benefits across local board areas and has the potential to build on and amplify existing local initiatives. Formal engagement with local boards will be part of the detailed planning for each focus area. In terms of financials, there are no immediate new financial commitments required from Council at this stage. The programme intentionally leverages our existing investment through partnerships. Further work is needed to refine each focus area, including design, partner and stakeholder engagement, and detailed consideration of roles and funding. This is proposed to occur over the next year, with longer-term opportunities continuing to evolve over time. In the shorter term, pilot projects are being scoped in the predator-free and the nature and water focus areas as early opportunities to work together. As the programme develops, detailed funding and delivery strategies will be scoped as part of the implementation planning phase and will be reported back to the relevant governing body committee for consideration and decision-making, including any longer-term financial implications. Ongoing development and design of the focus areas, especially pilot projects, will require the attention of existing staff resources. Today, we are seeking your endorsement for staff to continue working with NEXT, Koi2, the Department of Conservation, Mana Whenua and other partners and stakeholders to further develop and define the Nature Positive Auckland program and its opportunities. I'll now pass to Alex.
Ki te mea tuaroa, nā kai kaunihira, nā kai mahi o te kaunihira, nei rā te mihi mai oha ki a koutou I tēnei ata. My name is Alex Rogers. I have the honour to be the Regional Director for the Department of Conservation, Te Papa Atawhai here in Tāmaki Makaurau, and I'm a proud Aucklander. And I think if we look above us, those of us in the chamber, we see exactly why this place is globally significant, with its 3 harbours, its tūpuna maunga, awa, moana. We are lucky to call such a place home. And I think this is the right conversation for us to be having. This is about how iwi communities, philanthropic partners, council and DOC can be working together, not just for what this place is, but what this place can become. I'm going to assume not all of you are completely familiar with DOC's role in Auckland, but this place is important for us, particularly for the framing that Andrew provided around its ability to connect people with nature in New Zealand. So from a visitor perspective, we've got the only multi-day walk, the Aotea track out on Aotea, places like Tiritiri Mātangi, Rangitoto Island, places that we look after that are visitor hotspots for locals and foreigners coming into Auckland City. Biodiversity, we've got New Zealand's rarest bird right here in Auckland, the taraiti, as well as our rarest beetle. It's pretty cute. It's out on the Mokahino Islands. Places like Goat Island, our oldest marine reserve, are right here in Auckland. And then from a heritage side as well, places like Fort Takapuna, Mansion House, very, very significant heritage here in Tāmaki Makaurau. And then a great pleasure in recent months to have new connections such as the Waitakere Rangers Forum. I sit on that with Councillors Henderson and Turner, and we're looking forward to our first formal meeting the week after next. So look, just a couple of last comments. Firstly, a quick mihi to Councillor Christine Fletcher and Councillor Mike Lee. 3 of us don't see eye to eye on everything, but I respect their lifelong service to the natural environment here in Tāmaki Makaurau. And then I'll finish with a whakatauki. Some of you will be familiar with it. Kaore te kumara e kōrero mō tōna ake reka, which translates as the kumara does not speak to its own sweetness. But I think sometimes we have to. And I think as Auckland we could do a little bit more of speaking to our own sweetness, particularly when it comes to the natural environment and its foundation for the city's future. Thank you.
That was very impressive. Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Turner would like to ask you a question.
Thank you. Just a couple of questions. So, how do you assure that you're adding to what council does and not doing what council should be doing? So I looked here at the making space for water thing, triggered my thoughts because, you know, we've sold that as a dual purpose exercise, and the second purpose being the environment and nature and green space. How do we get, you know, how do we make sure that you're not being conned into paying our bills?
Is that, look, it's a very good question. And look, to be transparent about the Next Foundation, my board, our heritage, we are all business people. So in terms of stewardship of the funds and really making sure that we're being wise stewards of those funds, that is always, you know, something that we have to navigate and we're very, very thoughtful about. And look, I don't think there's any magic formula other than we're very, very wary about making sure we get dramatically different outcomes. I mean, and look, I'm held to account for a 10x delivery of impact. Now, look, there's some science in how that 10x is measured, but, you know, I don't get a free pass myself in terms of whether or not there's real accountability and a real return on the investments that we're making. And we seek to deliver, you know, the highest levels of scrutiny that we were subject to in the private sector, that we bring that level of scrutiny and accountability in terms of the investments that we make. And there's look-backs, there's the normal disciplines you would expect in and around that.
Good, good. Thank you. And the last question, you know, you're right, we're not the South Island, we're the biggest city in New Zealand, and there's been a lot of nice things said about this issue, but there is a tension in Auckland between conservation and recreation. And we've got a lot of places we've been locked out of. Have you got a strategy there that the public are going to be able to engage and observe and immerse themselves in the potential improvements?
Look, absolutely. In the one thing we would say, we're not going to solve everything, obviously. So we've been able to focus on those areas where we do think that there is genuine, actually some places where there are not tensions around recreation and conservation. In many respects, a big part of what we're looking at funding are areas where there is already well-developed plans around where those trade-offs, I think, have been managed well. And our investment is about trying to pull forward those investments to make them happen, earlier with more scale, as opposed to, doing something that creates more complication or tension around those. So look, you may say it's not been courageous, but when you look at, yes, we have a lot of money, but we don't have much money when you look at the overall scale of the problem. So we're able to be very choosy in the projects that we're taking on. And I think we're taking on projects that are just demonstrably, big wins for Auckland. We're not leaning into some of the, I would say, more challenging, more difficult, more expensive, when you really get into those trade-offs.
Thank you.
Councillor Patterson-Hamlin.
Kia ora. Thank you so much for coming in and for your commitment and vision, I guess, to Auckland and working alongside. I think that it's always good when private, public and third sectors work in tandem with each other. That's how the best outcomes arise. And so I really admire what you're doing and the fact that you've come here today to speak about it. Look, if I may be a bit, so you've outlined that where these kind of the projects that you're keen to get involved in are where there's well-developed plans, community benefits, social cohesion, where it maybe impacts Aucklanders who might not have opportunity to get out in some of those sort of beautiful areas of nature that some of the other areas enjoy. Can I interest you in discussions on the Avondale Racecourse?
Yeah. And look, one thing I would say, as we develop the plan, and by the way, this is with Next, we deal with this right across the country. Every second proposal that comes my way involves land acquisition at some shape or form. It's really difficult in this 10x measure that I'm held accountable. Whenever you put land acquisition on the table, I'm not saying that they're not wonderful things to do, but it makes it incredibly difficult to achieve a 10x return when you are meaningfully engaging in land acquisition for conservation purposes.
I think it's a very specific and complex example, there's a lot of different factors which would probably make it slightly different from the typical land acquisition that's put before you. So let's call it off further later.
Thank you for that. Councillor Ferry, please.
Oh, kia ora. Part of me wants to ask, this seems too good to be true, but I don't want to know the answer to that. So my actual question is, you mentioned quite a bit about some of our sort of outlying areas of high biodiversity and so on. One of the things I'm really interested in is how we balance the need to keep space for conservation and bringing that biodiversity back into everywhere in our city. And so I wondered if you had any comment on that in terms of achieving that balance of, so for example, I've got people in Point Sheva, Mount Albert, who are now seeing kaka for the first time in, generations. And I would love that to be an everyday occurrence across the city. So how do we find that balance, and how is your investment going to help us with bringing back biodiversity in our neighbourhoods? Yeah, thanks.
Look, I think it's a fantastic question, and look, we honestly, obviously don't have all the answers to that. I mean, the one thing that I would say, and again, my somewhat tongue-in-cheek joke about Wellington, But we are humble in the sense that Wellington has done some very good things, and they've had 10 years of learning. Wellington is not Tamaki Makura, but we can learn a lot from that and how they got those trade-offs working, how they really brought Wellingtonians along with them. Simple things like we thought predator-free would be the killer phrase. It wasn't. It was, we will get rid of your rats for free. That was actually what really resonated with Wellington. So I think we've learned some very simple, humble things like that. So I think we can learn from others. I do, in fairness, I mean, I've had the privilege of engaging a lot with the Cornwall Park Trust, with the TMA, and I would also say many of them have got really good ideas around that. They're thoughtful about these trade-offs. I have to shout out to the Cornwall Park Trust. I think they've got some fantastic ideas about making biodiversity much more accessible to Aucklanders, how they accelerate that. So again, in the spirit of what we're trying to do is we're not the sort of smart new things on the block. We're really just trying to humbly, where can we listen where there are good ideas, where can we learn from others, and to bring that all into the mix as well. So, and look, this will be, I've spent, 99% of my career in the private sector. I'm a year into this job. Making things happen in this world for me is materially harder than it was in my previous life. So there's also a degree of humility that we bring, but we're pretty determined in terms of wanting, and to reiterate Alex's point, I just think there's something, I've lived most of my career overseas. You come back to Auckland, and I've had the privilege of developing nature strategies for the city of Shanghai, for Singapore, for Beijing, and you look at what they have to start with and what they do, and you look at what we have to start with, and that's what I come back with, just this incredible sense of responsibility and excitement to Alex's. I don't think we don't shout enough at how sweet, our kumara tastes, and also what we can actually do with it going forward.
Just to add, Councillor Ferry, I think there's a really important council connect here as well. So if you look at where the kaka are coming from, they're coming from regional parks, they're coming from our offshore islands, which are protected, in large part by us. And so that sense of having that, almost that ring of biodiversity around the city, and then how you bring it slowly inside the circle. Yeah.
Kia ora, thank you. I think that point about the humility, but also the raw materials we're working with here is well made. I guess one of the things I'm thinking about with this is also the fifth plank, the Why Nature Matters, the education and engagement, and noting that wasn't one of the first two early engagement ones, but we have a bunch of things like our advisory panels, we have enviro schools and things like that. Is that something you're looking to take advantage of, where we can work together?
Absolutely.
Great, cool. Very keen to make sure that happens. Thank you.
Councillor Filipina.
Tēnā koe he mana. Ko matua. Thank you, Chair. Ngā mihi ki a koutou katoa, ngā mihi nui ki a koutou mo o koutou kōrero. Just want to acknowledge your fellas kōrero here. My pātai is in regards to the UNESCO. As the Deputy Chair of the Tupuna Maunga Authority, obviously there are with DOC assistance around the Maunga across Tamaki Makaurau. So is this another way, hopefully, of assisting this particular bid? Because I know at the moment we're sort of looking at a tentative list for UNESCO. So aroha mai, Gilda.
It's a very good question. So at the moment, the New Zealand's tentative World Heritage List is being reviewed by the Crown. That's led out of the Department of Conservation. There's a proposal coming through, as you've alluded to. And so that's being put up. So the UNESCO panel themselves have looked at it, and they've given advice to the government. We're giving advice to them, and then a decision will be taken on that new tentative list. Once you get on the tentative list, you've got to go over to Europe and state your case and try become a World Heritage Site. And it's a pretty involved process, and there'll be a lot more conversations to be had, but we're at that stage right now of refreshing New Zealand's tentative list.
Okay,
through the chair, just to add to that, so the Maunga Authority are currently on the tentative list, and the bid back in 2007 was based on two things. First of all was the natural beauty of the Maunga, and of course Rangitoto actually features in that alongside Mututapu Island, as well as the cultural heritage of the Maunga. So, and actually what really featured in that is that unbroken connection of kaitiakitanga that mana whenua have had over the Maunga. So again, this project working in partnership with Next continues that narrative, and that will be very important when it is assessed again by those boffins in Europe.
Thank you, Alf. Councillor Hills, please.
Kia ora, Mayor, and thank you, and Angie and your office for the work on this and inviting me into the discussions last year. I guess I've got two questions, one to Sam first of all, and then it kind of connects to Andrew. But our first meetings on this, it was quite high level and quite, maybe the focuses were maybe not going to enhance or work exactly with how we'd work. I guess how can you tell the story a bit to the committee and to the public of how you've kind of narrowed down what is possible, what's adding value, and what's kind of not just a one-off project which might sound great but may not end to the best outcomes. Not trying to make it a negative, but like there's been so much work between you all getting to this space, so it'd be good for you to kind of explain how you distilled it down.
Kia ora, through the chair. So yes, we have worked really closely with Koi2 and with Next and with DOC to really refine what was a very long list of opportunities, possible opportunities for nature in Tamaki Makaurau, to some really specific opportunities based on our current strategies, our current investment, where there's an opportunity to do more and accelerate kind of outcomes for those projects. So that's how the 5 focus areas got very specifically identified because of that alignment to existing investment and strategies, rather than igniting something new or working in more complex spaces, thinking about opportunities that were right there, ready, there was readiness to accelerate.
Thank you. And to Andrew, thank you so much for this amazing direction or gift to the city. But I guess what is your expectation on us and also DOC? Obviously politics and things can change, but what I've heard from you and the team is really it's about adding value, but what would your expectation around our investment, our kind of place in this whole thing, that you're not just replacing something?
No, look, I mean, prior to joining Next, I had 35 years with McKinsey & Company. I led our global public sector work for about a decade based out of Singapore, and had the privilege of serving many of the world's most impressive civic leaders, councils, city-states. If I was to say what was the attribute that really differentiated the good from the great, I would say there were 3 attributes. In my view, the great cities of the world were growth positive, they were technology positive, and they were nature positive. And the nature positive element was treated with the same rigour, the same accountability, the same share of mind and scrutiny that those first 2 were. It wasn't an afterthought. Nature was central to the value proposition of the city. And I would ask that you hold all of us to account with the same level of scrutiny, accountability, seriousness that you treat economic development, your technology plans, your growth plans. I think the great cities of the world, in my view, nature is not a poor cousin to those first 2.
Well, thank you. And maybe last question for Alex, just as the last partner at the table, I guess, but your kind of way of working over the last 10 years has changed quite a lot. I mean, you as in DOC, because of the natural environment targeted rate and other expectations, and of course your lobbying your own organisation and minister to help us there. But I guess how is the relationship now, and how do you think this will benefit? You know, you're working in the same office as our staff now. We've got partnership grants together. Do you kind of have an idea of how that's changed over time? Because I think a lot of people don't know quite how different this landscape was 10 years ago.
Yeah, we had a catch-up with the regional sector and MPI last week, and I described how Sam and I work together as the future. You've got council and DOC cohabiting. here. Our teams seamlessly work together on the same floor, and we partner right across the region now. When I came to the role a couple of years ago, Councillor Hills, the main challenge, frankly, was the one that Andrew has described, that eyes were in Wellington looking south and looking to the big, natural landscapes down there. But if you want to change the system and you want a different outcome for conservation than you've had in the past, you've got to connect with people. And this is the power of Auckland and its ability to, through that people power, change the conservation system. So I think helped also by a minister who innately understands this place and used to work here. And I won't get ahead of him, but we have got an announcement coming on Friday, which I'm very excited about bringing to Auckland. Thank you.
And Councillor, if I could just add one thing I would also say for me, some of the experiences that we've had in the past, we always felt like we were fighting against the thing. I have to say the mindset of the council and DOC has been extraordinary in really wanting to make this partnership work from day one.
And actually, I just have one more thing to add in terms of the identification of those focus areas as well, was actually potential to attract co-funding. That was a really important consideration for identifying those 5 focus areas as well. Kia ora.
Thank you for that. Councillor Newman, please.
Yeah, thank you. Just on the report at Para, I just really want to get this clear as to how this all works. In the report in the Nature and Water section at Para 54, it says, Auckland Council's anticipated role will be to identify priority sites within the Making Space for Water program and to develop detailed proposals for biodiversity enhancement. I mean, is there an opportunity to say, well, thanks, but no thanks, we just don't quite think that's right? I just want to make sure that there is a sufficiently constructive tension there, and that you're not just vassals receiving edicts, that if you don't think that that's right, or you think it needs to be done differently, or that's not the proposal that you back, that you have the ability to say no, and this is what we will do instead, or this is how we will do it, or we'll only do this if you support X type thing. I mean, tell us about that tension.
Well, the first thing I'd say, we're not like writing one big open cheque and sort of leaving it on the table and walking away. So we do expect that jointly we'll develop the specific feasibility plans, that they'll be subject to normal, capital envelope approval processes, etc., and then the ongoing discussions and intentions around how that money is actually dispersed. And that's the way we've operated for the last, decade. It's the way we'd intend to operate going forward. So, and look, I suspect there'll probably be a project or two where we say, listen, we just don't think there is a meeting of minds that, your objectives are your objectives and these are the nature things we would like to be achieved, and you may not be able to achieve them in those specific things. So I think there's going to be that overall partnership, that overall agreement, but literally we will be doing the mahi project by project and making sure that it stacks up with those normal disciplines. And look, again, to be transparent, it may not be something that you love, but I'm subject to what I describe as a pretty high degree of fiduciary responsibility and making the case and delivering specifics before I can finally disperse those funds from the next foundation side of things. So I think there will be that healthy, whether tension's the right word, I don't, but certainly those healthy disciplines will be maintained throughout.
Question, thank you. Councillor Turner.
No, thank you. I think it's best asked at the TMA, my question. Thank you.
Okay, well, this is a good news story, and so I've got a question for the council team. How do we ensure that elected members and local boards are informed of the next stages of the project, and how do we have oversight so that we can keep our great mob of elected officials involved?
Kia ora, we will ensure that happens through regular reporting and through any decision making that's required through the relevant governance entity, be that a governing body committee or in the TMA instance, the board. So we will make sure that that happens on a regular basis and as needed. Kia ora.
Thank you. That we have much more dispersed decision making than you do, Andrew. Nevertheless, it's a very positive thing. Thank you very much for that. I've got no further speakers or questions, so at this stage here, I'm going to put the motion. Oh, no, we've got comments. Sorry about that.
Can I just make a comment, please, Mr. Mayor? Thank you. First of all, I want to thank and congratulate Andrew Grant and the Next Foundation, and also Alex Rogers of the Department of Conservation and our own team, Sam and Nick. I want to thank the Plowman family for their generosity and their vision in the way they are acting as a booster for nature conservation across New Zealand. I'm familiar with their work on Rotorua Island, which I think was their first project. And then I've heard quite a bit about Project Janzoon in Tasman Bay with my friend Devon McLean. This is, as the Mayor has said, this is a good news story. This is sort of like a breath of fresh air for us, or should I say a reinvigoration of vision, a restoration of vision. Because Auckland has fallen behind somewhat in recent years. Auckland was a pioneer in public nature conservation, the Territory Open Sanctuary, going right back to the New Zealand Wildlife Service and Auckland University, carried on by the Department of Conservation, was an absolute pioneer, an open sanctuary, fully protected, where people could go and see a wonderful array, if you like, of native birds in particular and other species. So Auckland led the way. Auckland local government led the way back in the 90s with the Kōkako management area in the Hunuas, which saved that population of kōkako, one of the biggest in the North Island today. That was completely unique in local government. The Auckland Regional Council created sanctuaries, mainland islands, at Tawharanui in 2004 and at Shakespeare in 2010. But as I noted before, we seem to have kind of stopped doing that and focused on urban stuff, you know, intensification and all that stuff. However, so I welcome the Next Foundation and the partnership with DOC and the Council. I think it can only be beneficial for Auckland and our natural environment and the restoration of our biodiversity, the enrichment, if you like, of Auckland, not quantity, quality. I think that's the message, and the strategy, I think, is right. The 5 focus areas all make sense. They're all aligned, and I like the sense of aligning investment with what's going on. In other words, to boost what is happening or what should be happening in a partnership. In terms of alignment, it's also important to align the mainland, this maritime region, Tamaki, Makaurau, and the wider Auckland region with its islands. It's a maritime region, and therefore the islands, which are sanctuaries and sources of biodiversity which could enrich the mainland, like the kaka that come down from the Waitakaris or come over from Hauturu. You need a source area, and it needs to be aligned, and it needs to be, kakas fly a long, long way, but lots of other birds don't. And therefore, peninsulas around the Auckland region are very important. And I'm talking about Whangaparau, which is an obvious one, where the ARC established the Shakespeare mainland island at the Shakespeare Regional Park, and I understand there's work on extending that. I think another place could be Music Point, which points towards Rangitoto and Motuihe and Motukorea. And I'm also thinking of Mahurangi East, which is strategically placed towards the Northern Gulf. I think that would be a marvellous site for a joint approach for a mainland island. And therefore, you coming along today, I hope will re-inspire and refocus this council on what it does the best in nature conservation and bringing people to public open space. And recreation can work well with conservation. I see no problem in that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Deputy Mayor.
Oh, sorry, I just will wait while they step back. It's not that we don't want you to hear what we have to say. It is just part of our procedures. So
I sort of overlooked the procedure today because these are welcome people, you know,
Yeah.
and not staff. You don't say buzz off. They don't understand the way we behave.
well, some of them are staff. Some of them are staff.
So I took the liberty of allowing them, but I've clearly offended somebody's procedural place in doing that. But off you go, Deputy Mayor.
Right. Where was I? I was in a major positive frame of mind. Look, I just want to say this is outstanding for our city, for our region, and I cannot thank you enough. You know, when we went to all elected members at the beginning of this term looking at ways to deliver better value for money, this was a constant theme to work with the private sector, government, and partnerships to pull our resources together and make great things happen. So I'm truly excited, and I think we should be singing from the rooftops. If I was the loudest bird I could think of, I would be trying to emulate that bird song. I was particularly interested, Andrew, in those three things: growth, tech, and nature positive and nature. And I think, you know, we do concentrate on a city and all about growth. I mean, our conversation around this table at the moment is on PC 120. We do have a major pillar for tech, but actually to see it embedded so strongly now in that third aspect of nature, environmental, and as Councillor Lee pointed out with some really good examples, that focus is, I think, something we can be all proud of. So, Andrew, to you, Alex, Sam and Nick, congratulations. Where is the media when I want them? You know, they're empty. I just hope someone's listening. Oh, you're not the media. But I really hope that this is a major positive story for our city, for our region, because united we can do more than we can on our own. Doc, I acknowledge the work that you do, but we're stronger together, aren't we? To the Next Foundation, Andrew, to you and to those behind you, our city is eternally grateful, not just for this, but for other things that you have done before. So I think this is outstanding. To our staff beside you, we are going to make great things happen for this region. Town mouse, country mouse, I couldn't help but pick up that little country analogy, which gave me a wry smile. But all the best, all power to you. I can't wait to hear the feedback and the results from what you're going to do together. I think it's outstanding. Huge congratulations. And most importantly, thank you.
Give that Councillor Hill.
Kia ora, Mayor, and thank you once again. Thanks to you and Angie and the team. This wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for your team working with these great people behind me. Just want to really acknowledge, yeah, this is a big and will be a big step change, I think, for the city. We have had many discussions how we are short of cash, but I think working together and also having private investment in this work that will make a positive change, not replacing or changing what we're doing as a city already, but actually working alongside, partnering and adding value will make a big difference. I think, you know, the majority of issues that come to me are on nature, whether it's streams, whether it's planting, whether it's pests, whether it's new birds in the neighbourhood, as someone mentioned, kaka and others over summer. We have a lot more species on the shore than in my lifetime that I've ever seen before, largely because of volunteers, but also the investment by this council and by Doc and others. Just want to acknowledge Andrew and the Next Foundation and Koi too. They did come with some rather big ideas and maybe some ideas which sounded really exciting but may not have been the best thing to jump into straight away. So I really love the way they've worked with Sam and Alex and the team to really kind of get some really good direction on what's possible, what's long-lasting. The last thing we would want is a one-off project here or replacing some amazing work that volunteers in Mana Whenua have been doing for a long time. And I know that was not anyone's intention, but I think actually taking some time, working together, making it a sustainable way to actually help and invest in nature will be long lasting, and I think a really, really good way forward. And there will be very clear things to point to and celebrate over time, which is really important to investors to say, this is what we invested in, but it's also about weaving it in and building on what has been done by 4 generations by people in this city, but also, especially over the last 10 years, with things like the Natural Environment Targeted Rate, which has created a step change in what we have invested in as a council compared to before. There just wasn't the money to be doing what we are doing now. So it's really important that we back up the Next Foundation, not reduce over time what we are investing as a council, what ratepayers are investing, because those other investors won't come in if it looks like they're just replacing stuff we're removing. So I think the partnership is good. I think not replicating things. Often councils, governments, new regimes come in and want to put their stamp on things, but I think the longer term, I think I was at an Infrastructure New Zealand thing this morning, and it's about that bipartisan approach and not just reinventing the wheel. And I think it's slightly different than the concrete of busways and roads, but it's quite different. But actually this is not replicating administrations, communications, making sure that we're using that $1 wisely that's mostly going to be invested back in the whenua or into species of importance to our city. So I think we're seeing the change in our neighbourhoods, but this will be another massive step up. So just want to acknowledge and thank the team for wanting to invest in here and not sending that money down south to the places the world sees often are the only places where there's biodiversity, which is incorrect. This city we are surrounded by amazing landscapes and huge amount of nature, and people just need to get out more and look at it, and if we invest in it, it will be protected for the next generation. So thank you very much. Kia ora.
Thank you for that. Councillor Short, please.
Thank you. I just wanted to start off by saying thank you to all staff and everyone involved in this partnership. It is quite an amazing piece of work, but I'm genuinely really, really excited about this partnership. And what I particularly like about this is that the 5 focus areas have been carefully designed around the work that we and stakeholders are already doing. So I really appreciate that they're coming in to complement and support our mahi and not reinvent the wheel. As Councillor Lee touched on regarding Shakespeare Park, we've recently had the release of Hihi into the park, and as well as Wetapunga, which is not my favourite. But they're there regardless. But anyway, I am really excited, not just for the council, but for the wider Auckland region. I think Deputy Mayor has summed it up beautifully. United, we can do more together. So I'll be endorsing this, and I hope everyone else can too.
Thank you, Councillor Short. Councillor Patterson-Hammond, please.
There's a problem with going last. Everyone's taken my my amazing salient points. So just to talk about what Councillor Lee and Deputy Mayor and Councillor Hills and Councillor Short, anyone I've forgotten, has said, I come from background in the charity space, and I've often seen, I've often seen philanthropic organisations, as several others have said, try and reinvent the wheel because it's cosmetic and it's sexy. And so just a massive hats off to Next Foundation for not doing that. And doing what will make the outcomes better, and hopefully, and shout out to the staff as well. Of course, I guess what we don't want to see from this kind of thing is entrenching these existing inequities and things like that. And I can tell that there's been so much really quite deep and thoughtful mahi already, and that there will be going forward, which is amazing. So yeah, I'm not going to imitate any songbirds, but I'll quote from probably one of the loudest ones I know, erstwhile, Julie Andrews. Just to paraphrase, somewhere in our youths and childhoods, we must have all done something good. This is excellent. Yeah. Well done. Sure. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Fletcher, The Sound of Music, please.
Oh, well, the council chamber is alive with the sound of music by the sounds of things, but I just want to endorse everything that's been said and say that this is a magnificent initiative that builds on the legacy of so many who have battled well and to understand that if you're really going to put conservation and the environment into the forefront, you have to capture the hearts and minds of our young people going into the future. And that is really the opportunity with what is being presented today. Every one of us has got the ability to be a force for good, whether we are working in the private sector, whether we are working within NGOs or central or local government. I think it's just helping this sort of leadership will, I hope, bring so many to the table to understand they too can be part of it and to serve our city with love. So whether it's Andrew or Sam or Alex, thank you so much for the hard work you've put into bringing this together. I have long believed it's only through partnerships that we can achieve the outcome that we want, and that connection of people and nature, putting that to the fore is going to make us all feel much prouder to be Aucklanders in the future. So thank you.
Righto, thank you very much for that. It was a wholeheartedly supported item, and thank you very much for attending. I will put the motion. All those in favour of this wonderful comprehensive recommendation, please say aye. Aye. To the contrary, carried. And thank you very much for attendance, and give my regards to the Plowman family. Thank you very much. We're going to move to item 8.4, which is the approval of the shareholder comments on draft statements of intent for Tātaki and the Auckland Future Fund Trust Limited non-substantive CCOs. We had a workshop and a drop-in on this last week, and thank you to the CCOs who came into Daniel's committee last week. The item was carried over from the Budget Committee last week. The lead counsel is for Tātaki and the Future Fund present, and I wonder if they want to speak to this before we kick off. I'll move this, Deputy Mayor, and you'll second this, presumably. Do you and Councillor Fletcher have anything to say? Well, in that case, we will hear from our Rachel and Sarah. Get away. Thank you very much.
Kia ora koutou. So as you stated, this item is to agree shareholder comments on the draft statements of intent for Auckland Future Fund and Tātaki Auckland Unlimited. We held that drop-in session for elected members on the 1st of May, and this report reflects those comments. And now this report is to agree Council's comments, and we're happy to take the report as read and can answer any questions.
Do you wish to add anything there, Deputy Mayor Simpson, about this?
Oh, look, I've actually said this all in Daniel's committee, so I don't think so, but I urge my colleagues to endorse it. Thank you.
Very good. Councillor Fletcher, do you wish to add anything to the relation?
No, we had a fulsome discussion. I mean, the Auckland Future Fund it's a long-term investment, and there might be challenges where it fits as a CCO in the normal restraints that we put on CCOs. But we were very lucky to have both Chris Swasbrook and David Callan come to the appointments committee last Thursday. There was a fulsome discussion around it, and they are moving very progressively forward. So no, there's nothing further that can be added.
Welcome, Councillor Newman, the chair of that committee.
Look, thank you. What I wanted to know, and look, I support the feedback. This is fine. I'm happy to vote for this. But moving into the long-term plan, one of the things it reflects upon is in the TAU feedback on the Support Council's strategic direction for stadia. In line with the earlier work overseen by North Harbour Stadium Steering Group, TAU will continue to operate North Harbour Stadium while supporting consideration of the long-term vision for its future, Stage 2. any decisions will be made through the LTP. And what I'm wondering is, are we getting information from TAU now on the operating performance of North Harbour Stadium, given it would have significant depreciation costs? And we probably need to get that information back, because that will need to inform our approach for the 10-year plan. Are we going to be able to get that information back soon? That's my first question.
Thanks for the question, Councillor Newman. So you'll be aware that one of the things that Council endorsed back in March, when you endorsed the sort of stadium investment objectives, you also looked at endorsing the development of a stadium network investment plan. So it's that kind of information that we'll need to inform not only just for North Harbour but for the other stadia that Council owns, to inform some of that decision making and advice that comes to you through the long-term plan process.
I fully understand that, but what I'm after from TAU is I want to understand specifically the depreciation costs around the stadia, because we're going to need to have a frank and candid debate for the 10-year plan, and I'm looking across the council network at the major sources of costs in the depreciation space, and within TAU's portfolio, the stadia are going to be number one, and probably within that portfolio, North Harbour Stadium would be right up there. So can we get that?
I don't see there's any reason why we can't get that, Councillor Newman, so we'll relay that to Tātaki. Yeah.
Got no further questions, so you two can retire from the bench. Is there a further debate about this item? In that case, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. To the contrary, and it's carried. Right. What's next? Right. We have the Auckland Council Group Financial and Service Performance. So welcome Karuna and Michael. I'll move this and the Deputy Mayor will be happy to second it, I hope. Yes, thank you very much. So hold on for the excitement, guys.
Good morning, everyone. So for this Q3 Financial and Service Performance Report, we will take the report as read, but happy to answer any questions. Mike and I have got a really brief verbal update just on some of our key results. Great. So we had 22 performance measures that were updated in Q3. 11 of these were achieved. One was substantially achieved, which is, of course, when it's within 2% of target, and we had 10 that were not achieved. So we continue to do really well in library visits, visits to our leisure centres and library items checked out, and also noise calls attended to within timeframes. Where we are not quite meeting the targets are, of course, for areas such as the food scrap diversion, domestic curbside. However, there are some initiatives underway to address this. For example, the pilot initiative currently being is underway at the moment, ending in, I believe, the end of June. And with the animal management, although the results are short of target and they're slightly reduced from Q2, noting, however, that at this time last year we're at 84% and the result stands at 91%. We also have around 20 staff that were in training, and they're going to enter the field in May. So we expect we should see results to improve in the coming months. So I'll just hand over to Mike for the financial update. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks. So in terms of capital delivery, at the end of March, we were at 83% capital delivery. We're seeing some under-delivery in the parent and in each of the CCOs. While teams are working to catch this up, you'll be aware through our annual plan work that we are forecasting to be under at year end, and for that to have an ongoing debt impact. Debt, the capital delivery is largely funded by debt. That reflects the ongoing benefits that this investment has. So total debt and debt to revenue are currently below budget, reflecting strong economic stewardship, but there is some ongoing risk there, as noted by Moody's in their recent review of the credit rating in response to some central government changes that you're aware of. In terms of operating performance, we continue to see some really strong operating performance with both direct revenue and direct expenditure under budget. Drivers of this are largely unchanged from previous quarters. Strong consenting and property file revenue in the parent, and delays to some operating projects that will be carried forward into the next year. Outside of these direct results, you'll note some indirect variances, and I just want to touch on a couple. Depreciation, notably higher than budget. That's driven by both some accelerated depreciation in water care, as they've got some assets that need to be retired, and also the impact of some updated valuations of transport assets. So the updated valuations drives a higher depreciation, that valuation coming through after the budget had been set. And the other one is non-direct revenue, where you see a big variance. That is due to the need to take a point-in-time view of the future fund value. At the end of March, the value was not great at all, but this has since reversed, and I know that you've been updated at other committees about that's currently gone the other way. So that's just the fact that for these results you need to take that at a particular point in time. And we stand ready for any questions. Thank you.
Councillor Turner has a question.
Thank you. When I was on the local board, and I've just checked with my old local board, Thursday last week, they got their quarterly report. They get spreadsheets, they get tables of the work programs and explanations of where they're at thus far, how much has been spent thus far, where the projections are. Why don't we get that report? Never got it since I've been here. Why don't we get those figures?
I suppose it's about finding that balance between something that we can digestible, and we already have a pretty chunky quarterly report, as opposed to digging into certain areas. Obviously, if there's specific areas of the business that you want more information, we can look to provide that. We continue to work on other ways of making that information available to you, but we can touch base offline if that helps and see what we can find and do for you.
Thank you. I think the same answer you gave me last time I asked, but we can touch base offline and try again. Thank you.
Yeah, just in addition to that, there is the investment area section, and what that is designed to do is pick out our key capital project highlights by investment area as well. So there is that part in the quarter report.
But the issue I have is that these reports that the local boards get makes it much more transparent to the members. It makes it much more manageable to follow issues. I'm looking at one here, the Titirangi War Memorial Hall and Library, which has blown out from $1 million to 6.5, and following that stuff through so that you can build those specific questions, and also have an arguable, maybe not defendable, but an arguable set of criteria to bring to the long-term plan to start to drive forward on some of these areas of savings and that conflict between savings and what's the other one called? Sorry, deferred spend. It would just be really good if we could have a better in-depth understanding of this stuff. Thank you.
So, Michael, are you able to send out those to the specific councillors in relation to their particular local board? Because it's probably, people tend to be interested in their area. I don't want 21 of them, if that's all right, as the person, because I couldn't handle it. But I should imagine that various councillors would be interested in seeing the specific items within their area so they can have a look at it That's what you've got in mind, Councillor Turner, I believe.
Yeah, that's really good, Mr Mayor, although I suppose we can just look it up by looking up the board. But it's about getting it in front of us. I think I'm just backing away from that a little bit as I think about the stuff that we would miss that's about the governing body stuff. But anyway, enough said for now. But.
Well, it has some merit on a localised view, but I don't think we should send out all 21 to everybody, and certainly as the person who has the courage, don't send them to me. I'll be relying upon each of our parochial persons to chair their own particular area and have a good look at it. But I think it's not a bad idea, because I think that it behoves each councillor to have a more detailed knowledge of their own area than the general cross-section. So there is some merit in that, and I'll leave you to think about that. In the meantime, Councillor Short has an even more devastatingly complex question for you.
You'd hope so. Anyhow, something that caught my eye was the higher rental revenue from the home maru. Am I even saying that right? Sorry. Home maru housing, especially because they were up for sale, or some were up for sale. Are we looking at some sort of strategy with these properties moving forward, or are we still planning on selling them?
I can probably only speak to that at a high level here, but there was a strategy for redevelopment in the Haumaru program, and that continues to be their strategy. That probably means if that's been slowed down, then we'll get more revenue, but the reinvestment has been slowed down. We can look to get something back to you about where that strategy's at through the appropriate committee. We can follow that up.
No, thank you. Just another question. I saw with vesting, we're not vesting as many assets. There was, I think, what was it, 35? I can't remember the figure. And then developer contributions obviously increased. Why is there such a, are we just not bringing in as many assets from developers? I mean, we've got all this growth, but with vesting, we're not really inheriting much out of that. What's the, obviously I think you can see where I'm going with this, but why is there such a difference in that space?
So actually that one, at a group level, our vested assets are on budget.
Meaning more of a council.
Yep. So at the council, the difference there is a timing one. We had somehow spread the vesting of the CRL assets across the year, and actually those will all come upon completion, and they've obviously not come through yet. So that difference is pretty much a timing difference. Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Gillen, please.
Oh, thank you. Just on the food scraps, do you know where the pilot is being run?
Yes, I believe and it ends in June for 7,000 participants across West Harbour, Hobsonville, Glen Eden, Ellerslie and Remuera, is what I have here.
Okay, thank you. And I note that it says on page 48 that the amount collected has not met the target for 6 quarters. Can you tell me, what does that mean for the contract? Are we having to pay any penalties there? And are you able to tell me how much that is, or is everything, or is it still within the range that we're supposed to be delivering?
We'll have to come back to you on that. I haven't got those details.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Councillor Hills, please.
Thanks, Chair. And to Councillor Turner's point, I think John and I, well, definitely I get those forms sent by our local board. If you get the local board relationship managers, there's an easy way to get them to send it to the relevant councillors. That would be a starting point, because I normally get those. The questions I have, just through budget and some concerns from community, there's this assumption we don't get information. So I've heard, why don't we get councillors get the P&L updates monthly? Could you just go through what it would require to do such a thing monthly? Could you provide more information, the cost of doing so? Just like, this is quite thorough, but you're talking, I think there's an assumption we should get the line-by-line data that was given to all councillors 3 years ago, and it didn't really, not an easy decision-making way.
So what we look to do is to provide this pretty fulsome report quarterly, and that includes both performance as well as core financials, performance measures, some more in-depth look at things like our investments, our debt, and the investment area by investment area summary. So that's the quarterly pack we produce. We also produce a monthly financial dashboard. I think you received that for April a couple of weeks ago. That one delivers both operating and capital performance for the parent and for the group on a monthly basis. In terms of the kind of line-by-line budget piece, we do continue to work on that. It was made available, as you say, a couple of years ago. We're doing some more work on how we can make something like that available again. We're working through the technology behind that, and seeing whether that could be helpful. I think last time it has some challenges because just the quantity of information. But we look to take any guidance from primarily from the Budget and Performance Committee as to what more could be helpful, and happy to work on that.
Thank you. Obviously the headwinds we're finding ourselves in, the capital seems down, kind of a little bit lower than our normal run rate, I guess. Is that partially to offset the savings goal, or is this just generally delays in procurement, delays in costs going over where we are at this kind of time in the cycle?
So there's no deliberate efforts to slow down by either the parent or the CCOs. It's probably a combination of effects. I think in the report you'll see at Watercare there's some timing differences, and with the big projects, Transport had some delays with things such as, I think, the final train for CRL, and in the parent you've had a number of different timing differences. But yeah, there's no deliberate effort to slow down capital program in order to make savings. It's just a combination of effects.
Okay, and the last question, Mia, just on, obviously inflation was higher even before Iran than we expected, than we budgeted for, and now we're going in OCR. I can see all those interest rates going up. How are we, without going into commercial negotiations, how are we trying to get ahead of some of that borrowing, or are we just going to land some of it right in the worst possible time? Has there been work going on in the background to try and get ahead of it, or you just can't beat the markets?
I mean, to a certain extent, markets are markets, but obviously we have a really professional treasury team, and they spend all day and all night focusing on this, on how to get best value. They look at the forecast funding requirements over a long period of time and look to balance the best information they can get hold of. They have a treasury management steering group that has some oversight, provides them guidance with both internal and external experts.
That Councillor Henderson, please.
Oh, no, it's fine, Mr. Mayor.
That's all the questions I've got, so do you want to... Oh no, Councillor Newman.
Look, thank you very much for the work and the delivery of the Stage 1 renewals at the Manarewa Aquatic Centre, and also the Tington Playground. That was good work there, and also Rundle. My question really is, and I'm not on the regulatory committee, but it refers to the new kennels that have been built at the animal management shelter in Manukau, which is great, but it does refer to the long-term kennel capacity remains an ongoing concern. Well, it's not a long-term. I mean, it's a concern right now. Are we going to be getting some advice to inform the LTP discussions around the next stage of that? Because clearly, I mean, well, there's a very, very high kill rate in that shelter, and we're transporting dogs to Henderson and Silverdale and what have you, but there will need to be the next stage of a solution in South Auckland around that kennel. So is there any advice, or if it's not you, can you take it back to animal management that we need a report back, and not just to regulatory, need to come to the committee of the whole?
So yes, that's a huge concern to our staff in that space, and you will be discussing that tomorrow afternoon at your LTP session.
Okay, that's all the questions I've got, so you two can retire as a further debate about this. One last little bit there. Presumably this goes to the stock exchange as part of our...
The quarterly one's not released,
Annual,
just the annual and the interim.
Righto, thanks for that. Any further debate? I'll put the motion to accept that. Please receive that. All those in favour, please say aye. The contrary carried. We'll move to item 8.6, which is the Chief Executive Strategic Program Update and Group Financial Officer updates. And I would welcome Phil and Ross. Phil can stay where he is, but Ross emerged from somewhere. He's joining him. This needs to be, I'll move this and the Deputy Mayor will second this again for debate. And righto, off you go.
Thank you, Your Worship. Morning, councillors. Oh, it's now afternoon. Right, I deliberately won't duplicate stuff that was in the quarterly report and keep things at a reasonably high level. I'll start with the regional deal. You're aware, obviously, of it being signed. Where we're up to with that now is that there are layers of governance around the regional deal, and the idea that there will be a formalised program of work that we're, actively and jointly working on with central government and reporting on. So where we're up to at the moment is that those meetings for the political governance layer with the Mayor, Deputy Mayor, Councillor Hills, I think, is in that reckoning are going in the diary. Likewise, we've started meetings at an officials level with the hierarchy and in the relevant government departments. Had the first of those, and we're formalising the work program that'll be reported to you in due course. Second thing, and this is referenced in the report, it's not directly affecting us, but will be of interest. The fact of the government's simplifying local government proposal being tabled on the 5th of May. So around the country, as a consequence of that, you've got a number of discussions taking place around voluntary opt-in amalgamations, premised on the formation of unitary authorities, with the idea that regional councillors won't exist in the same form in those areas where they're voluntarily jumping into new relationships from the 2028 election. The reason I mention it is that there are lots of requests coming in to discuss the Auckland experience, how things operate, and so on. So, and you'll have relationships and knowledge of other councils around the place that are involved in some of those discussions. There's a lot of stuff heating up in that area. In the legislative front, there's a lot we could talk about. I just mentioned that the bill with the move on orders provision was introduced on the 14th of May and is progressing, although not especially fast. So just an FYI there. I mentioned the fuel supply. Attached to this report in your agenda is some economic analysis by Gary Blick and the team for your interest. We will be reporting back in July on the plans around dealing with fuel supply and cost issues. So look for that in July rather than here. Mentioning the transport reform and where we're up to, the formal proposal that deals with the structural changes, the setting up of the public transport CCO and the arrangements for council in terms of the balance of transport functions, that's out in the organisation at the moment. Submissions for staff consultation purposes have closed. We have more than 3,000 submissions on that, so there's a truckload of work to go through just to see what the reaction from the staff around those arrangements will be, and necessarily, I need to do justice to those, so we'll be taking a little bit of time now before the final decisions are made. Happy to, I have briefed you broadly about what direction that's taking. But I'll come back again once we've digested the feedback. You'll be aware the clock doesn't stop, if you like. We've got that 6-month period to have arrangements fully in place. So, decisions are happening. You'll note that I confirmed last week the appointment of Steve Mutton. That represents a change in the executive team to deal with the inclusion of the transport function in council, and as is well known by councillors Henderson and Williamson, the interim board is well in place and progressing work on the public transport CCO and the stewardship of the AT organisation until such time as it's no longer needed. Quick note on recovery activity. So the recovery office will close down at the end of June. Okay, that's a reflection of how well advanced the buyout program is. There is some residual activity, but we'll sort of bring that into the mainstream activities of the organisation, and the recovery office in its current form will cease on the 30th of June. To the progress that's been made, we're now over 1,100 properties bought and about 60 to go. So a few tricky ones at the tail end of this process, as I've mentioned before, but progress is pretty good. I haven't got a whole lot of numbers to throw at you around this, but one that's of interest is that of the 600 houses that have now been actioned, we've bought 1,100, we've dealt with 600 of them in terms of clearing the sites. 230 of those 600 have been relocated in their entirety. So quite good from a, if you like, a recycling point of view. And I might just pause to note that that effort in terms of waste minimisation just won a significant award at the, I'm going to forget the formal name of the organisation, just at the waste awards in Wellington, that effort just won a significant award. Lost my notes here. Oh yes. While I'm talking to awards, I just want to quick shout out to Healthy Waters in flood resilience. That team has won an award for the Greville Road Emergency Works project. That was nationally the Stormwater Project of the Year. And actually another award for that team, Dean Yee won the best presentation at the Stormwater Conference. The reason I mention that is that there were 60 presentations, and that one that covered the Making Space for Water project was judged to be the best at the whole conference. I also note, but we haven't got the results yet, that we have a number of projects and initiatives that are finalists in the Taitura Awards, so those are the national awards for local government management. Budget-wise, we've just covered where things are at, and trust me, I don't want to open up any cans of worms from last week. I just wanted to mention that work is now necessarily underway over how we're going to meet the savings target and the inflationary pressures, which are quite significant. I'm doing some video comms to the organisation this afternoon. We need the size of that challenge is such that we need quite a structured program and a definite plan for how we're going to close the budget gaps, and to understand very early on what aspects of our cost structure need to be looked at for contributions. There'll be some reporting necessarily to the Budget Committee and to the Value for Money Committee shortly, and I want to crack into that pretty quickly. As we've talked about, we don't want too many months going by and before we've got a clear plan around that. Operationally, and again, there's figures in the previous items quarterly report, but the council parent is favourable in terms of savings, OPEX, revenue, capital program. So we're closing in obviously on the end of a financial year in a few weeks' time, and things are still looking reasonably good. Ross can give you a more scientific and detailed analysis as needed. I just wanted to mention as well, and this is partly about the closing down of the Recovery Office, but also the disciplines in the organisation. We will finish this calendar year with 110 fewer FTEs than at this time last year. So there is a bit of scrutiny and discipline around staffing numbers, just for your information, and that's with a fairly reduced staff turnover of sitting about 8%, which is clearly to some degree a reflection of the external economic environment. But I will pause at that point, and my good friend here will talk to the financial side of things.
Okay, thanks, Phil. I'll keep it quite brief. I think we've covered a lot of it in the previous item in Phil's update. Current trends are reasonably favourable. 84% capex delivery for the year to date to the end of April, up slightly from March. Revenue across the group 4% favourable to budget, and expenditure 3% favourable. So generally the continuation of the same trends. Everything's largely in line with the budget projections for next financial year. As discussed in the previous item, it's not about deliberately slowing down capital investment, but it is helpful that a little bit slower capital investment means a little bit less debt, and all of that helps offset some of those cost pressures and fuel costs in the budget. As Phil said, lots of work thinking about how we find savings and manage the risks through the course of the coming financial year, and you'll hear more about that, as Phil said, in Value for Money Committee, Budget Committee. Watch the space. Probably the only other things I'd like to just comment on are some of the risks we've talked about as part of the budget process. One of those is just the broader economic situation, inflation, interest rates, fuel uncertainty. So we're starting to turn our minds to what the projections look like beyond next annual budget, but into the LTP, which is where we've got a 3.5% rates increase, but it's based off a 2% inflation assumption, which looks a bit risky at this point. So we are keeping a close eye on inflation projections, interest rates, all those kind of things, and we're going to have to, look at all of that stuff. The Reserve Bank and the Treasury, through the budget process, have put out their forecasts, slightly different views. Most economists will have slightly different views on the economic outlook, but they all agree it's all highly uncertain. Those are things we're focusing on. In terms of our credit rating, so we've got, as advised previously, Moody's have put the council's credit rating onto negative outlook, which follows on from the government being on negative outlook. And that situation is unchanged. Moody's will now kind of look at the government's budget and look at the economic predictions, and will monitor, economic progress over time. So the key thing, I guess, for our Moody's credit rating is, well, what does that, what do the government's books look like? What does the New Zealand economy's outlook look like? And they'll have some view on the budget, they'll have another view in a month's time, and a different view a month after that, given all the uncertainty. So very much a watching brief, and we need to keep a close eye on the government's books and the New Zealand economy. The other key risk we're keeping an eye on, particularly thinking about the medium term, the next 2 to 3 years ahead, is the depreciation numbers. And you heard in the last item, there's been some movement. Current trends are a bit unfavourable. Some of the depreciation's higher than budget. A couple of things in the near term. We have got. We're preparing for a lot of the CRL assets to transfer across. We've got some large assumptions in the budget, but we're getting to the pointy end of the details of which assets and what values, and they'll come across. There's the risk that we get more assets at a slightly higher value, could be an impact. And in Auckland Transport, for the roading assets, there's a revaluation of those assets as at 30 June this year. If some of those values are higher, then that would mean higher depreciation costs as well. So a bit of volatility, a bit of movement. We know that construction costs are up. Most construction projects have a bit of fuel involved, so there are kind of risks to asset valuations and therefore depreciation. So that is something we're going to have to keep a close eye on. Look at those depreciation forecasts. Look at these asset movements and valuations as we go through. Why is that important? It is important because key part of our financial strategy, and we'll get into this as part of long-term plan discussions, what we do with it, but a key part of the existing strategy is moving to fully fund depreciation by 2028. As we talked about in the budget process, that is a key plank of our strategy. It means that once we get to that point, we're not relying on debt to fund assets. Essentially, it means that we are collecting enough money from rates and other revenue to cover the depreciation expense, and that money is then used to fund asset renewals. And so, in theory, over the long run, if we're collecting enough cash to cover the depreciation, that means that we can fund asset renewals without the need to borrow. Separate discussion around which assets we fund and all those kind of spending details. The asset renewal programs will be considered through the long-term plan, but it is pretty key that we maintain that commitment to funding depreciation, and the depreciation we need to fund will be a function of all those kind of asset movements that we're keeping a very close eye on. Okay, happy to take any questions.
Okay, I've got a couple of questions just to clarify. I've just checked with the CEO. The summary offences moving on orders has not been moved on yet, but we are preparing for that. Similarly, the RMA National Direction and Instruments looming in the future, which is more interference really. I think they're busy. It's not, well, I don't know quite what the parliamentary state of that one is, but they're busy fixing a problem that no one else can define. So where are we with those two, please?
Just ask Megan to come up on the resource management.
While we're doing that, I've got one for the Mr. Blick, who put in a little worrying fuel price thing there. No one's been able to explain why is it that diesel has shot up by doubling and petrol's gone up by only a bit. What is behind that? Why did one move and the other one not?
Thank you, Your Worship. Very good question. I think it's about substitutability. So in the case of petrol, you think private vehicles can be substituted for EV or public transport, but with diesel, there aren't the same substitutes. And so heavy machinery for haulage or for construction, it's essentially diesel's the only option. So it tends to come under more pressure at times like this.
Seems a bit of a hard case because you can't immediately substitute a petrol car for an EV car at the speed of attacking Iran or the discovery of the Straits of Hormuz by the President of America. I don't understand. There must be something to do with it, because if the price of thing is going up because of short of availability, then why is the availability of petrol more than the availability of diesel? I mean, substitution isn't an answer that I can buy.
Well, I think the prices that we see now and the volatility around them, it's currently about the current availability, but it's also got a forward element to it in terms of people's expectations into the future. And so the willingness to pay more for diesel now reflects to some extent the forward view and the risks around that.
Well, it didn't make the move to the government to go away from electric vehicles toward diesel use all that clever, is it really? Didn't they see this ahead? I mean, they should have employed you. You seem to be a genius, or possibly not.
No need to answer that one, Gary. I think you're a genius. Yeah.
Relative terms, perhaps we could come to those other questions with regard to the moving on and the national direction instruments.
Thank you, through the chair. Just moving on orders, there will be a paper at Policy Planning and Development Committee next week to set ourselves up to do a submission if that's what you choose to do. In terms of the resource management and national directions, we are expecting the Select Committee to report back to the House this month, so let's say end of June, and that will then start the various reading processes and any kind of changes and amendments that come. So once we see what that's looking like, what kind of changes have come through from the draft or the initial bill, then we'll get a better understanding about what that means, what the timeframes are, possible costs, all of that kind of stuff. Some of that will happen immediately for us. Other things will be over the next few years. So as always, we'll update you as we understand that, and happy to work that through with you at the right time.
So the changes to the RMA are going to be in before the election, or after, or before and we don't know about it until after, or?
No, the expectation is with the reporting back in June, it'll probably be signed off into an act probably around August or something. So it will be, the intention is clearly before the elections, yes.
Interesting. Councillor Patterson-Hamlin has a question.
Kia ora, I do. It's more of a request to the Chief Executive. Thank you for the memo on the fuel price rises and the implications there. And I know you mentioned you'll be coming back to us in June. So my request is it possible to include some of the attendant changes in terms of the use of PT and active modes around the region? Just note that AT put out numbers saying that, so this April, cycling trips are up 20% on April last year. Numbers like that are going to be an important part of considerations around how, if, why, what we respond to the fuel crisis. So will PT and active mode data be included, as well as the sort of petrol use data and that you've included in this initial memo when you come back in June?
Very, very happy to do that. I think I said July rather than June, just to clarify.
Sorry,
but
July.
Definitely will include that material.
Councillor Hills, please.
Thank you very much. First question just is on, Phil, your comments on the savings, the kind of very high mountain we've given you through the budget. And I don't want you to probably go into the detail you did at appointments, but you did seem far bleaker in your assessment than maybe in public. And I understand you didn't want to get involved in the debate we were all having, but when and how will we find out some of what you're having to put forward? Because from what you said in confidential last week after our decision was the drastic kind of moves you may need to make to reach, especially with the diesel, but I don't know, it did seem, I felt a little more concerned. I was already concerned at the budget, but I felt far more concerned about what we may be facing to get to the 106, but then plus the diesel and inflation, the cuts essentially, the cuts and savings that we will have to be doing in the next month.
Well, I haven't got a precise answer for you, other than to say that I think we've got to do work on what the program will be, what areas we're going to focus on in literally the next few weeks, with a view to reporting it back late this month or very early in July. You know, that's the time frame we've got to think about in terms of stuff taking effect early in the next financial year. I don't think I'll comment beyond that.
Okay, and with just my understanding of the 106, obviously there was an LTP direction, but for a factor of 20 million on top of the 86, my understanding is you thought at the time that would be a number you could likely get to, but then now we've got the inflation and diesel and stuff overhead. So that's where that figure came from? I know it's not direct, it's not line by line yet, but that's how we've been ramping up over the last 3 years?
Yeah, well, that's certainly the way that I've been thinking about it, and obviously we've just talked about where things sit at the moment in terms of the current financial year, and I've always said that I think actually for where we are, it's the responsible thing to do to put the organisation under a bit of pressure. The issue is not about meeting. No, let me reframe it. The inherent challenge here is less about arriving at a number and more about understanding that the bigger the number is, the more likelihood that we're going to impact services en route to achieving it. And then we've got two compounding things, these additional costs around fuel, diesel cost and what have you, and some other inflationary pressures. And I feel like I'm relitigating the discussion from last week, and I don't mean to. The other thing we've all got to have on our mind, me included, is that if we want to hit a 3.5% rates increase in a higher inflation environment in the following year, then we've got to work extra hard this year. So that's, I think maybe I'll leave it at that for today, Councillor.
That's okay. The last couple of months I've been really appreciating the meetings with Parul and the extra information around the diesel and where it's sitting and what our possibilities are. I still, and maybe I'm wrong, but I don't feel confident yet that we're being given options or the team are able to look at things to put to us to reduce the diesel cost. I do see that Stacey and team have brought forward it looks like about 80 buses earlier onto the road, which obviously will having an impact. But how hard are we looking, obviously great emissions, but the cost. Today's news looks like diesel's taking off again. So are there things you could take to local boards to say, here's some no-mow, reduce the diesel and the mowing. Are there any things like COVID going to come our way in the next few months to say, here's where you could reduce your cost and the diesel use temporarily or long-term? That may be going on in the background, but I feel concerned that if it takes off, we might be in the not 25 million additional, could be 50, 70, 80 million additional if we don't cut it at the knees now, the diesel use.
Yeah, well, again, this will be a feature of the report back at the beginning of July. We'll make sure that we talk about that. You're right that there has been some thinking and planning about where one would look in the event that we wanted to pull back on diesel usage, but we've been cautious, I think prudent actually, not to go too hard too early in too radical a fashion. Understanding where the big cost drivers are here, okay, buses, ferries, rubbish collection trucks, The core council organisation has a significantly electrified fleet. So, you know, the things that you might ordinarily look to in terms of commuting and day to day for the core council organisation, we're already ahead of the game. We'd have to look at those other big aspects of diesel consumption. But July is the answer in terms of that next level of detail.
We're not going to collect the rubbish in an electric bus, Richard, so don't worry too much. Councillor Gillan.
Oh, thank you. My question was about the change in the Moody's ratings outlook for Auckland Council, and I'm just wondering, were we the only council that would had its outlook changed? And if so, why is that? What is it about Auckland Council? Is it just the size of Auckland Council that has led to that? Because it's actually the government that was. It was actually the government that had its outlook downgraded, and Auckland Council seems to have just been a flow-on from that, rather than anything we're doing.
We are the only council that has a Moody's rating. So many councils use Standard & Poor's because we're large and have over $10 billion of bonds. We need 2 credit ratings, and so our Standard & Poor's rating hasn't been impacted. It's the Moody's one that has been impacted. Part of that is the way that Moody's look at our credit rating profile. They look at how close we are to the government. They look at the revenue streams we get from government, and then rates capping is one element that means we're more closely tied to central government. So that's their assessment, is that they do look at our financial management, all those things. Those are one factors, but a key factor is that relationship to central government. And because they've moved on central government to a negative outlook, they've said that their view is that we're closely linked to them, and therefore we have that they have moved us onto negative outlook as well. So from here, a key determination will be what do they think about the government's books and the outlook for the New Zealand economy, and then that will probably likely flow through to us. The other councils that have Standard & Poor's ratings, so a number of them have had credit rated downgrades over the last year or so, and some of that's related to water, all of the pressures that they're under, etc.
Okay, Councillor Henderson, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick one, just on the fuel prices, and it says in the memo there the likelihood that households will reduce their discretionary spending. Just wondering if we need to, as part of that advice, understand that a majority of our revenue actually doesn't come from property rates, and our fees and charges, use of halls, use of pools, etc., will be impacted by that discretionary spend. So I'm just wondering if you are looking at that, and kind of a supplementary, are you planning on advising either us and the local boards who will get impacted by that as well, of the impact on our user charges and things of that nature?
I'm just pausing to see if Gary has a comment. Perhaps I haven't got anything immediately in front of me, Councillor, but I think we can, give you some feedback on that. One observation would be that usage of our facilities, in part, obviously, because they're free, and the question of discretionary spend isn't relevant for all of the council services. I mean, those volumes continue to be quite high, sort of 6% increase year on year. That's not changing. If anything, it's possibly going to accelerate.
That's fantastic news, actually. And yeah, so just sort of if you can put that under your hat, and we can come back to that when we got some data. Yeah, thanks.
Won't be getting any easier. Councillor Ferry.
Oh, that was quick. I only just put my request in. So just building on Councillor Henderson's question a little bit there in terms of the data. I think one of the stories that we perhaps don't tell very well is how we have increased service levels over the 16 years of council, and it would be helpful, I think, to consider how we might articulate that. We had some mention of some of it in the debate last week. Is that something that we could look at doing better as an organisation? I guess I'm thinking about, we tend to celebrate when we open a new library, but we don't say, hey, we now have a network of, I think it's 82 libraries or whatever it is now, whereas, 54. 56. I'll just rely on you to get a number at some point. because we can all just yell numbers, 107. That would be how many libraries I would like us to have. Anyway, so point is, I know we do tell some of that story in the annual report, but how can we tell that story better? Because there is a perception that we're not necessarily doing more, and actually we are doing more every year. So any reflection on how we can tell that story better with some data and some comms and some media, I think would be really helpful, reflecting on last week's debate. Thanks.
I'll just acknowledge, I think there is an opportunity there. How to do it is probably the question. I might take that offline and talk a little bit more with our comms team. I think service levels, absolutely. I mean, one that I've definitely been thinking about is the growth in the size of the capital program. That's actually the key driver in terms of CCO costs and numbers increasing, and I think it's important people understand it. So, yeah, there's a challenge there, and I think we should take it up.
Yeah, just to add to that, so the team are doing some work around that, looking at some of the performance measures. So looking at some of the long-term tracking those things as part of LTP, and also looking backwards as well. What are some of the metrics we do have? What are the things we can quantify? So rather than just talk about we provide this much rates increase in these services, what are some of the metrics around the quantities of services or the quality of some services? So we're starting to look into those things. That may help. Data is only one part of the story, but it can be quite useful if we can get that in a good space.
Thank you. I would encourage that as we go into this next LTP discussion, that we are looking back, say, 10 years, because the change if you look at the change year on year, it's relatively incremental, but if you look at the change over 10 years, it's significant. I think that would be really useful to look at that, align it with the LTP and look at that 10-year window of change would be great. Thanks.
As far as perception goes, it depends where you're getting them from. If you get your information from the Taxpayers Alliance, you'll never find out that we did any more. Councillor Newman has a question.
Ross, if we I don't know if you were here when I asked about the question on the depreciation cost for the TAU portfolio this morning, but I'm assuming that you and the finance team are plugged into those conversations in TAU, because going into that 10-year plan, if we are going to hit those savings targets, we may as well we should probably look to bite the bullet of some things that might have been more difficult previously, around whether we're prepared to wear some of those big capital assets that chew up money for depreciation or not. So are you shadowing their financial stewardship to get that information to feed back in, or are you waiting for direction from us?
Yes, I was online earlier and heard those comments. Yes, we'll certainly be looking at those assets as part of the annual report and also the projections going forward. So we'll still be part of the consideration. I guess the scale of CRL assets and roading assets are a bigger scale, but yes, we'll certainly look at those ones as well.
Okay, well, I appreciate that the biggest ones are roading, and I'm not hearing anybody saying let's not fund for the renewal of the roads. But okay, with respect to, are you going to be able to bring back some advice around some of the significant cost centres for us in terms of the PT concessions? We may as well touch on all of these things. If we're going to feed into a 10-year plan looking to cut the costs, let's bring them all up for discussion.
Well, in terms of things to look at for the long-term plan, that will be part of your discussions that are continuing with the LTP workshops, and then that will land as a direction document where, as a group, you'll be able to say, well, these are the things you want advice on. So that's kind of up to the group around, well, what are the things you want us to look at in detail, and what options you want on the table for the long-term plan.
Can I just get clarification, because what you're talking about there is a group of people who are saying, well, look, got to hit that target, but then waiting for us to give you direction on where to go and look for the target. I'm looking for you to give us confidence that you're going to come and provide us with advice that maybe some people don't want to hear. Are we going to get that?
We'll certainly look at the depreciation of the assets, condition of the assets, and give you all of the facts. But in terms of making decisions on, if you're looking at significant service changes, then that's, I guess, a political decision, and you need to give us the direction on where you want to make big changes. That's all I'm signaling. But we'll certainly look at the facts.
Watson, please.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. And a bit premature to be talking about it just at the moment, but when that information comes back, it'd be useful to have an outline of what actually has been spent on depreciation in some of those assets. Because if you take Mount Smart as an example, a magnificent venue that the Mayor is at for the soccer and for the league, it wasn't so long ago the figure of well over 400 million was being tossed around for the cost of retaining Mount Smart. And I'd be absolutely sure there had only been a fraction of that gone in, but as I said, that's for another day. A question to the CEO, Phil. Just could you remind me, please, of what position or approach we're going to take with these properties that were bought out, that we own the land. I'm assuming in many instances, in my area anyway, they've had fences put up or fences left up. What's the plan of attack over the forthcoming years as to what, if anything, we do with them? Because some of them are because they're replacing cliff edge properties are offer quite stunning vistas out over the Gulf. And you're not going to be able to build another house there, but they obviously might lend themselves to just very open kind of little bits of reserves, particularly when they're contiguous. So can you just remind me what we decided to do with those?
Well, just to remind, the team is being guided by a piece of policy work that you signed off that sort of seeks to assess the potential alternate uses. In some cases, there'll be, the possibility that they can be built on, or in the long term built on, depending on how stormwater mitigation works proceed. In which case we'll hold them for that day when it's safe to do so, or potentially where they can be built on sooner, but with the right design to reduce the flood risk, raising floor levels and so on. There are other possibilities. There are some properties where the potential sale to a neighbouring property on condition it's not built on to extend gardens and what have you is a possibility. So we're not sort of in a position to rule anything out. The mantra is let's recover as much of our investment as possible, but in a really prudent and low risk way, and carefully, right? Because there's a bit of sensitivity here. Families have been displaced from those properties, and we don't want to sort of charge in and do anything clumsy. So there's a quite thoughtful process going on through the recovery office around this.
So
I'm visualising more the flood risk ones, to be honest, Councillor Watson.
I'm kind of visualising the more coastal ones. In terms of ongoing maintenance, that cost is really zero. I'm assuming we're just leaving those properties as is, maybe cutting the berm, and that's about it.
Yeah, very, very minimal, just to deal with any nuisance or fire risk stuff from overgrowth. Yeah.
Question, Councillor Turner.
Thank you. On the back of that, so how's our $1+ billion worth of land purchases from the being dealt with in the books? How much of it's being considered an asset and how much is being considered a liability?
So we purchase the land as capital expenditure. We write out, checks over $1 billion. We then take the assets onto our books. It's then valued based off, the best view of the value of that land, which is a lot less than what we've paid for it. And there's a loss. There's a whole exercise of a write down. There's a provision. There are actuaries go through it, valuers go through it. There's a whole science between working out what that loss is. That is an economic loss. It's an accounting loss in our books. We're not purchasing these land. We're not purchasing these properties to make money. We're doing it for a totally other purpose to say to protect lives, and because it's the right thing to do. So, but as Phil said, some of it could be sold. There is some of the land has utility to the public. Some of it could be sold, or packages of it, or deals with neighbours, all those kind of things. So there is an accounting valuation that reflects sort of the best information about each piece of land.
Thank you. I wasn't challenging our reason for buying the land, just what we did with the calculation once we got it. So when do those losses appear? They'll appear in the end of this year's actuals, will they?
No, they've appeared in previous years when we've made the commitment to enter into these to purchase the land. So when we've made accounting provision, there's a provision in our books that recognises we're likely to purchase this land and have this write-off. So the accounting loss. So it's not a cash loss. The cash we need is the purchase of the property. The accounting loss is already provisioned in our books, and then that is released and adjusted depending on the actual numbers and how those valuations play out.
I will ask for take that offline because I don't really understand that entirely. But thank you. I'll get back to you.
Thanks, Councillor Turner. Councillor Henderson.
Yeah, thanks. And thanks to my colleagues for this sort of line of questioning. It sort of sparked something that I've been meaning to ask about for ages. So just off the back of Councillors Watson and Turner's questions, what is the timing for when we're going to start to make decisions around these bought out properties? Because I don't want to bore you with the rest of my colleagues with a ward-specific issue, but a year ago, I put in a letter on behalf of a community group for a particular property to expand a wetland, and I'm very keen to sort of start figuring out when they're going to find out what's going to happen. So yeah, what's our timing situation going to look like?
Councillor, I'll have to come back to you on that, to be honest. Certainly there is engagement with local boards. That's an important part of the process to get any local views around the potential future uses. I'm not, and the answer won't be uniform for the whole portfolio. We'll be doing it progressively, so we might take it offline if that's all right.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor. No further questions. Yes, we do. Councillor Lee and Councillor Short. Councillor Lee, you can go first.
Thank you, Madam Chair. When the idea to buy back these properties was first raised, it was sold very well under the brand of making space for water and blue, green, etc., etc. And I certainly liked that. It made sense. But now what I'm hearing is not so much making space for water. It's recovering the money, and that's fair enough. But I know that when the council gets into commercial activities, quite often other people clip the ticket, unfortunately. But anyway, my point is, and it's to pursue the point raised by Councillor Henderson actually, the idea of riparian reserves and open space was a sound one, especially in flood-prone areas, to turn a negative into a positive thing. And going back to the next foundation's vision, it's quite compatible with that. So I just wonder, in the planning, whether we understand that the main school of thought is to sell what you can, but is there someone in management advocating for, okay, what about our making space for water, urban riparian open space, wetland reserves connected and so on, which is not just a local board matter, but a regional matter. And I just wonder whether there's any serious input or thought being given to that making space for water, that very attractive making space for water concept, or is it just something that we talked about at the time and we're back to just flicking these things off when we can, when, if you like, we're able to. So I would like the Chief Executive to tell us if the making space for water concept is still being taken seriously.
Yes, it is absolutely still being taken seriously. I gave you a bit of a admittedly shorthand answer. There are absolutely a number of these properties that will be retired from residential use, and part of the stormwater and open space network, and you know, quite a number for which this will be absolutely the right long-term answer. The policy that you agreed covers that off. To be really clear, the reason we bought yes, it was in some cases overlapped with the making space for water projects, and we've prioritised those projects to deal with some of the most acute flooding risks. So there's a bit of an overlap here, but the principal reason and the key criterion in the scheme was to get people out of harm's way where there was an intolerable risk to life, quote, rather than just for a stormwater project. The Making Space for Water program will continue buying properties under public works and other mechanisms in the future where we want to do these projects. You know, how far you want to go, how fast you want to go with that program, given it was agreed as a 10-year program of work when we started this journey 3 years ago. How fast you want to go is going to be a key discussion for you in the long-term plan, I'd suggest.
I was thinking of in terms of planning, not how fast we want to go. We have to have a plan, a coherent plan first. This is to be part of a future riparian reserve, or this part is a kind of marginal and it can be returned with safeguards back to the real estate market. But I'd like to see some work being done on this. And then we decide, once we have a plan, a coherent plan that makes sense, rather than a kind of an ad hoc approach, then we can decide on how fast we want to go. That's my point.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to leave the room with an impression that this is all ad hoc. Of course, we've got detailed flood modelling and an enormous body of work that Craig and the Healthy Waters team have done now. So the consideration of these parcels of land is absolutely tied in with their professional view around the flood risk and where we need to invest in terms of stormwater infrastructure and what have you. So point taken, Councillor Lee.
Lunch is being held up by Councillor Short and Ferry.
Oh, shit. I'll be quick because I also would like a break. But Ross, you were talking about the depreciation and with roads, and knowing that all roads are very materially different and obviously hold maybe different values. How are we doing this? We're not doing a one-size-fits-all for our depreciation. I'm talking about that with the roads, but we're not going for a one-size-fits-all approach. Are we kind of obviously valuing the roads by road? Like, how are we doing this? Because it's a mammoth piece of work, and a one-size-fits-all I don't think would work.
Yes, it's a mammoth piece of work. There's lots of data, so there's a whole asset management system that holds all the roading data. So at a component level, there's lots of data, and then there's unit rates applied, useful life assumptions applied. So there's kind of a whole bunch of different categories, different assumptions applied, that Auckland Transport has a view, we get external valuers, the likes of Becker's and the rest will come in and provide sort of professional judgment across that data. It takes a long time, lots of work, very technical, but there is a whole science to it. It's not one size fits all. It looks very much at the type of road, the classification of the road, the condition of the road based on all the best surveys and data. So it's only as good as the asset information data that you hold, and then the professional judgment of the assumptions you apply. But big and complex, yes.
Beautiful, thank you.
Very please.
Kia ora, I'm trying to phrase this as a question to help out in terms of the future land use around the Category 3 stuff. So would Mace Ward, as the outgoing recovery manager, be a useful person for people to ask for a briefing on what's happening in their local area, as I have found?
Mace would be an excellent person.
Great.
And, please do reach out to him.
Thank you.
Just while I'm talking, just an answer to an earlier question that related to home security, the opportunity for councillors or for elected members more generally, actually. So the policy kicks in formally on the 1st of July. Some elected members, a very limited number, have taken the opportunity thus far to have an assessment done, which is obviously the prerequisite to assisting in that regard. Anyone who wishes to have such an assessment done and take advantage of that in preparation for the policy being in place for 1 July is very welcome to talk with Luann Ballantyne, and she will make that arrangement. In the Mayor's case, he can talk to me.
Okay, I think we've had a fair old scrapping around that one, so I'm prepared to put the motion that we receive the Chief Executive's and Group Financial update. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, carried. Now, there is actually...
Mr Mayor, just quickly on that issue, when you were asked about diesel, I've sent you all pretty much a really good article out of Forbes, which details exactly why diesel has had so much of a squeeze on its price compared to normal petrol. It's a very good article.
Oh, I'd like to read that.
Yes, I've sent it out to councillors as well.
Please do. The next two items are procedural, so I will move these together if I have a seconder for that. Thank you, Councillor Filipaina. And I'll move those, put those two motions. All those in favour say aye. Contrary, carried. The last thing is we have a movement to go into secrecy, and after which I'll go to lunch. We'll have a secret lunch here. But I'll move that we go into secrecy to discover the one at the end of the day, and it'll be seconded by Councillor Williamson, who's a known member of a secret society along with me. So all those of you who are not Masons can vote. All those in favour of saying going secret, please say aye. Contrary, carried. We're going to have lunch break, and we will reconvene at 1:45 to discuss the ferry situation. The chairperson of the ferry group is present, but he can go and have lunch too.
Sorry, is that 1:35 or 1:45?
1:45.